Okay, that was the shortest intro ever because I thought I went live and then it didn't go live and then it finally went live halfway through my short intro. So hi everybody. Jesus, I'm so disorganized today. Welcome to the very first start of a new podcast that we don't even really have a name for. I just called it like pretty much like Sunday meet and greet because I had no idea what to call this because nobody came up with a name for me. So I blame everybody else on the panel and I take no responsibility.
It's the unnamed podcast. There you go.
That's it. It's the unknown podcast. So give me a second to get everything here set up and see who all's in the chat so we can kind of side eye buddy and I can mute things. So we got about 3 or 4 people in here. We got about 6 likes so far. So thank you everybody who's an early bird of popping in. We're going to kind of go around the room because some of these guys you already know, you've already seen. Some of these guys you don't know. At least on my channel, some of the people who are in the chat probably know them. They're looking at me going, who the fuck are you? Which is fine. I'm okay with that. So, Raz, why don't you go ahead and start? Raz? That's you, man. Go, man, go!
Off to a great start.
All right. Well, I'm Resvgram. My channel, Resvgram Plays. I'm a former game developer, and now I'm a bitter old man that shouts at a camera on YouTube at old games, reminiscing about the good old days. So if you ever want to see that, just check out my channel.
So he's like every other YouTube channel that I watch. It's amazing.
You're right.
Immortal Afro, would you like to go ahead and do your introduction, please?
Yes, sir. Hello, everyone. I am your Immortal Afro. Josh, thank you for having me on, Nick. Geeks with Cash.
You're welcome, man.
Yeah, my channel is focused around trying to rebrand the industry to get away from the AAA nonsense that we're dealing with and putting the focus on understanding and viewing the value of games and not getting suckered into this, current modern bile that they call entertainment. So, yeah, that's what I'm.
Wow, we've already gone to bile. we already went to bile. That's actually kind of reason. We've already gone there. It took us all of like 2 seconds. Fantastic.
That's really fast.
I am actively editing the description because I fucked up and then put you guys on the description.
No description. What?
Yeah, I'm like unbelievably disorganized today. So you guys may have to refresh the page to get these guys links. I am going to have by the end of the stream or sometime after the stream, depending on how this goes, their links to their channels. You guys should definitely sub to these guys. These are all great guys. SGR, take it away, my man.
All right. Well, retro and modern gaming, game reviews. Fun thing that we do not as often now is an uncensored podcast where anything and everything is free game. Typical YouTuber as well, but hey, that's what we got.
And last but not least, Geeks of Rage. I love that channel name, by the way.
Thanks. So, I am none other than Retro Roy, the host of the channel Geeks of Rage. So I guess you could say I'm kind of finding my niche here on my channel, doing retro stuff, but also kind of for some strange reason, I keep doing Smash Bros. And Splatoon every Sunday. Don't ask me why. It's kind of like a running joke at this point, but it's one of those things I kind of like doing like community type stuff. You know what I mean? And I know it gets the subscribers involved and stuff, and I'm trying to kind of figure out something else to play outside of those 2 games on Sundays. But I also, when I have time, try to bring up anything that would be geek culture related, whether it's pro wrestling, like action figure toy stuff. I mean, whatever, like anything that just is along those lines, and try to do my own little commentary, if you will. And, of course, doing random podcasts such as this in between.
Yes, and this definitively was random, like we said. We came up with the idea, so we're like, we should do this. Yeah, we should totally do this.
Blossom into something beautiful down there.
Yes.
The best part was we're like, yeah, let's do this. All right, tomorrow. Wait, what?
What? Nick, you got this, right? Okay. I totally got this.
It makes it even worse. We're like, all right, yeah, it's 4 p.m. for me, 5 p.m. for you. What about you?
Dude, I have to do time zones everywhere, man. I'm in Colorado. Nobody is in Mountain States time zone, right? I don't do anything with anybody in my own time zone.
Well, I mean, yeah, because if you did, that'd be boring. I'd rather hang out with everybody across the world anyway.
I know. Retro Gaming So's wanting to pop in here in a little bit. I think we're going to kind of keep this tight right now for the moment, man. This is the first time we're doing this. We're trying to kind of keep this tight and condense. By the way, we can pop up comments in here. We're doing good so far, man. Games is in here. And Lance Jennings is in here. BHG Gaming is in here. We got all sorts of cool people in here. We got about 7 people in here hanging out right now. Yeah, we got about 7 people watching right now, so it's kind of good. So we're going to start rolling into some topics here so I can kind of get us moving. I imagine some of these are going to take a bit of time because some of you guys have a lot to say about these because you came up with the topic. I'm just here to organize and be along for the ride and to be the not-so-pretty face of the channel. So, you know, what are you going to do? All right, topic number 1. Make gaming niche again. Games don't have to appeal for everyone. I feel like From Software has made a career out of this, but you guys go right ahead.
Yeah, and they are very successful at it.
They certainly are.
Yeah, make gaming niche again is, I think, a very important message we got to permeate throughout the industry because we've seen what happens when you just let anybody in and how much it's changed the landscape for gaming to where things like pay to win have become a top priority for developers, and skill is just kind of put in the back seat for a lot of games, especially fighting games lately. And because they want everybody to feel like they got a chance or whatever. I'm like, well, that depends on how much effort you put into the game. Same thing can be said about Dark Souls, a good example, because that game is very successful despite being hard. And
I'll be honest, it's not one that I tend to gravitate towards. The first one that I played was I picked up Demon Souls because I got the PS5. And I'm like, well, let's try it where it started out on the original title. And kind of immediately regretted my decision, if I'm honest. It's not that it's insurmountable. It's hard. It's very, very hard. I don't feel like it's something that you can't beat if you're willing to put in the time, but it's the kind of game I look at and go, do I really want to dump the 100 to 125 hours it's going to take me to get the skill level to complete this game? Is it really worth the time investment for me? Not that it's a bad game. It's absolutely not. It's a very pretty game, and it's balanced the way they want it to be balanced, which is to say soul-crushingly hard, which was the intent.
Yeah. It creates value for certain people. That's kind of how you find your niche with certain games. Because like when I say not every game is for everyone, that doesn't mean you don't get to play games. Period. Because everyone has like their favorite genre. Some people like fighting games. Some people like platformers. Some people like shooters. And you don't want to take your game and make it for everyone, because now you kind of you lose your you lose your identity. That's what happens to a lot of games that have been coming out recently, because they're trying to appeal to the masses.
Well, my kind of argument from a business perspective is that I understand why the industry is leaning towards this universal homogeneity, where games are becoming 100% accessible, because they're trying to broaden their business. They're trying to net as many fish as they can get. But the problem is when everything is like homogenous like that, you become basically a bland mediocrity. There's no masterpieces anymore. There's no peaks and troughs. It's just here is your shade of gray. There's nothing that stands out anymore. I mean, look at like game soundtracks. I mean, there are chip tunes that people still know today, whereas a lot of modern games they're just, it's insert generic score here and it sounds almost identical to everything else. And I don't harp on just the sound, but like there are games where you could show screenshots, especially with like the franchise games, where you could show a screenshot and somebody couldn't tell you what game that belonged to. And that's a problem.
Well, and I think part of that goes back to people using engines that have built-in assets. When you start using things like Unity and you use things like Unreal Engine, those are great tools, but they also have certain built-in assets. So if you don't have a good creative design team, you can't really make it look distinct. You end up using the built-in assets. And the more times they get used, the more generic it looks. Now, gameplay is another aspect, but we also have BHG Gaming saying, well, what about the Amico? That's pretty much your business model, making games for everyone. And you're right. But the way they do that, and I'm probably the main person outside of Res that's probably focused on that, because most of these guys know about the console, but they're like, maybe when it comes out, maybe.
Yeah.
And that's fair. That's a totally fair point of taking on it. Is they're trying to make the game accessible from a gameplay standpoint. They're not trying to make the games all homogenous. They're trying to keep the control scheme simplistic so anybody can pick it up and understand it. But somebody who's better at a game, like say you take a game like Biplanes, it doesn't matter that it's simple. It doesn't matter that you can learn to control it in like 5 or 6 minutes once you get used to how the control scheme works. Somebody that's better at the game is still going to kick your butt every single time. Yep. Certain games are made to where they can kind of give you a little bit more of that, I guess, for lack of a better word, yo-yo effect, like in Mario Kart, where they can try to keep things close. They can try to make power-ups more accessible to you to try to balance it to where it stays competitive. But that's not, and much like a fighting game where you can pay for the new character that has all these amazing abilities, it doesn't matter if you don't know how to play the character, it's not going to do you any good.
Exactly.
There's a certain level of skill that's required to be good at any of these games. And even to the point of like sports games being the worst one, you can pay thousands to $10,000s of dollars to get the best roster or more, and you're still going to lose to some guy that knows how to play the game, right? If you don't know how to play it. Money alone will not solve your problem.
Mm-hmm. And that's where the whole issue with pay to win has come from. That's become a staple in a lot of games that are not fun. Like, for example, Tekken 7 was a victim of this, not recently, but when one of the characters came out named Leroy Smith. And he was painfully simple and overpowered to the point to where...
Dude, I messed with him, and he's a badass. You're right. The other character that they added, that female president character from like Norway, she's much harder to use because she's got like 5 or 6 different stances.
Yeah,
and I found the stance character is almost too complicated for me because I have to know how to go from one to the next and what links from one to the other. And I don't have the time to learn that, quite frankly. I can barely play Tekken proficiently against the computer. I can't play it at all against another person. Like, I get creamed.
We call those honest characters, and Leroy is not an honest character. Because when
you're telling me that's worse than like Eddie or Christy.
Oh, Eddie and Christy they're gimmicky, but they are honest because you have to know what you're doing. Like, button mash can get far with Eddie or Christy, but someone who spent time with them in the lab is gonna kill them every time if you don't know.
I'm the kind of guy that plays Steve or Lee, the one with the Leon looking hair.
Yeah. So, Steve, I feel like is a pretty honest character, and he's almost feels a little gimped when you first start using him because he's mostly punches. Whereas Eddie is all legs, and so he inherently has more range. So Eddie appears more dangerous when you first start fighting him, but as you learn him, unless you run into a good player, you're going to find out that people like me that use him on a casual basis are going to trigger certain moves more often than not, because those are the ones that they found that the easiest to access, but they're not going to know how to link it into any of the more dangerous stuff. They're not going to know how to go high to low into mid and then back into like a couple of lows to trip you up in your mix, and you're going to be able to basically go boom and then counter it pretty easily. It takes a bit of practice, but then Tekken in and of itself is probably, I would argue, is one of the least accessible fighting games next to Street Fighter V. That's out on the market right now. It has made no effort to make itself more accessible. And Street Fighter V tried it by making it more ground focused and more simplistic in the combos, but it only really made the disparity between a good player that knows how to play that back and forth neutral game and the ones that don't even worse when they did it.
It's nothing like getting double perfected by somebody who's playing Dan Hibiki.
It's really complicated when it comes to fighting games because you want, especially if you have a franchise that's been around for a long time, you want to reward your players that have been playing from day one with legacy skill, but you don't want to undercut them by throwing in mechanics that make the game stupid easy. Like Street Fighter V, I kind of have a beef with because I really enjoy Street Fighter 4. So from 4 to 5, it seems like they made it too simplistic because now everyone feels like they play the same, and a lot of the complex notations that were present in 4 are missing in 5, which kind of diminishes the my desire to even practice because I can pick that game up and just having a solid foundational understanding of fighting games and be a threat. And it's just like it's kind of like you said before, everyone's samey. The game isn't interesting anymore. It kind of lost its unique appeal. And of course, I understand the appeal to get more people in, which is fine. But the thing when it comes to like making games niche, like fighting games at its core, they're always going to be difficult because there has to be a winner, has to be a loser. And a lot of people don't like to lose, unfortunately. But when it comes to a fighting game, you can't really change it to where you feel good about losing. You're just going to bring down the total quality of the game to try to appeal people who aren't really going to stick around in the long run. You want to reward your legacy players.
Well, it's the participation trophy.
There has to be a fine line on those things because you have to bring new blood in. Mm-hmm. You can't keep with the same players the whole time. But where I feel like 5 has fallen on the wayside, and then we'll kind of like move forward here a little bit because we're a little focused on fighting games as far as like niche games, and it's a good niche because fighting games are still, even though they've gotten vastly popular, are still very niche, right? Mm-hmm. Like if a fighting game sells 500,000 copies, that's considered a success.
Yeah.
Whereas Call of Duty, if it doesn't sell 5 million copies, it's considered an absolute failure.
Yeah.
You know, so. But when it comes down to it, I mean, you have to make things and you have to change things up. And I feel that's where Street Fighter has really kind of hurt itself, is it's been resting on its mechanical laurels for so long that it really has not adapted itself well to some of the games that are out there now. Because there's so many games that do what Street Fighter does, but they do it in a faster way and throw in a few new mechanics, like, say, Dragon Ball FighterZ, for example.
Yeah.
You can use a lot of the same inputs, but that is much faster. It's 3-on-3. You've got a couple of things to help you put some pressure on and get in, and it's much tougher to really get a grasp on. But at the same time, Street Fighter V is throwing in things like, you know, you throw in your V trigger and use that as like, you know, an active cancel so that you can try to implement like other parts of your combo. And trying to remember all that and finding an opening to be able to even execute that in a fight still, I think, makes it very technical, right? Yeah. In and of its own. Even in its simplistic way, it's still really technical and difficult to do. Well, I mean, you don't have to make Street Fighter the same as it was in 1985, man. I mean, even more. Look at Mortal Kombat. Mortal Kombat is not the same game that came out in 1990. It's not the same game that like was Mortal Kombat 9. It's its own. It changes over time, and it always has.
Well, I don't like necessarily mind the game changing. I guess another thing, a good point, like is Dragon Ball Fighters, because like there's room for new fighters to come out and test that, you know, that new mechanic, or you know, an easier, more, I guess lenient mechanic or something like that. It just becomes a little aggravating to you know, players who have been with a specific fighter for so long to see it turn into the opposite of what it was. I can understand, like, let's say from Third Strike to Street Fighter 4, because people were saying, like, man, Street Fighter 4 is stupid easy compared to Third Strike. Third Strike has a very high skill.
Oh, yeah.
Third Strike is probably one of the hardest Street Fighter games to get even remotely decent at, primarily because the parry mechanic is such a pivotal part of that game.
Yeah. And so, like, with Street Fighter 4, that's where I came in. Because, like, I tried Third Strike, and I'm like, I don't know about that.
The game's hard, dude. It's beautiful. I love that game. But it's so hard.
Yeah, so, like, there's good, you know, media. Like, I'll say Street Fighter 4 was kind of like a plus and a minus. Plus, because it brought in, like, it revitalized the fighting game genre. And it kept a lot of, you know, technical, you know, hard, high skill level aspects in it. It's just when you see that go far even further with 5, it's like, oh man, even the guys that came in with an easier game with 4 are put off by 5. It's so easy.
Well, actually,
simple, I'll say that.
Yeah, I'm to go to BHG's comment here. I'm not expecting a 3v3 5 through the air like Superman kind of thing. That's Dragon Ball. That's not Street Fighter. I agree, but there's things like the parry mechanic, speed, techniques that you can execute, the way you can link things. They can make the way you could link things more flexible. A good example of a game that kind of plays a little bit like Street Fighter, it's still 3v3, but it's a little bit more grounded. Look at Power Rangers Battle for the Grid.
That's another good one.
That's a game that will allow you to link damn near anything into anything else. But you have to be careful with the amount of juggle meter that you have so that you can keep your combo going. And some people have gotten insanely good with it, so they can do 40, 50, 60 hit combos before you ever touch the ground. They would never do that in Street Fighter V because that would be considered unfair to a new player to get caught in a combo like that. It's kind of like being caught in an infinite combo in MVC2. right?
Oh, yeah.
Nobody liked that except for the people who could execute it.
Something I want to add though about the combat mechanics that made Street Fighter 4 kind of broader in appealing, but at the same time, it didn't make the game homogeneous, and that was the addition of the Ultra system, which was added in because you have this momentum going throughout your match where you have one player beating the crap out of the other player, and your Ultra meter builds as you get your ass kicked. So the Ultra meter, when it reaches its maximum, when it fills up or whatever, it provides an opportunity, and it's not an instant. There still needs to be skill involved, an opportunity to turn the tables or at least dig themselves out of this hole. And as an example of a bad version of this is if you've ever played, and I'm segueing away from fighting games for a moment here, but if you've ever played Super Mario 3D World, they have this thing called the white Tanuki suit.
I knew you were going there. I knew that's where you were going. Yeah, I hate that thing.
After three failed levels, like after you die 3 times, you hear a little doorbell and a box appears, and it's the white Tanuki suit. And when you put the white Tanuki suit on, no enemies can hurt you. No environmental damage other than falling can hurt you. So you're essentially given a free run throughout the level. And I watched my nephew play this, and he was so proud that he had won Super Mario 3D World. And I had asked him, I was like, were you playing with the white Tanuki suit? He's like, well, yeah. It's like, well, then you didn't win the game.
You got a participation award.
Yeah, you're right. And
I honestly, every time that thing popped up, I got irrationally angry at the game. I'm like, yes, I know I suck right now. Thanks.
Yeah,
I grabbed it one time because I didn't know what it was, and I'm like, oh, what the hell is this madness? Because I didn't even know what it was at first. Right? And I'm like, cool, I've got a Tanuki suit. Why am I taking no damage?
It's like, oh,
like what's going on?
Suck, so here, take this.
But the reason why I have such an issue with it isn't so much that it's catering to the unskilled to win, because it's basically putting the bumpers in the bowling alley. That's not what bothers me. What bothers me is that in games like Street Fighter 2, if you've ever had it for the SNES or whatever, and you bumped down the difficulty, say you went from the default of like challenge rating of 4 stars down to like 2 or whatever, or 1, because you wanted to, defeat M. Bison, because he's hard as fucking. But anyway, so you beat him with the 1 star. It says, congratulations, if you want to see the ending, the true ending, then up the challenge rating to normal and you'll get the ending. The white Tanuki suit doesn't do that. My nephew got the same ending as I did, so therefore it cheapens. It's like communism. It cheapens the person who actually busted their ass to get the true. And it's like, what's the point? I'm done.
Are you familiar with real quick God Hand for the PS2?
I've seen it. I've not played it, but I am familiar with it. Yes.
One thing I love about that game is like when you can select the difficulty when you start easy, normal, hard. Depending on what you pick, the main character will say something. If you pick it easy, it's like, what? You want me to hold your hand? Normal, he says, no, that's what I expected from you. And you have to play through normal to unlock hard. And if you click that, he just screams like, yeah.
A lot of what you guys are talking about too reminds me of Nabbit from the Mario Bros. U Deluxe or Mario Bros. U. My daughter always plays Nabbit. I'm like, come on. And she's like, no, look. And she'll steal all the power-ups so we don't get them too. I'm like, you don't take any damage. So why are you taking everything from us?
Because she's trolling you, man.
Yeah. Like my son was trolling me the other day on the stream. I was like, what? You just threw me in the lava. I was reading the chat. Come on.
Get good, scrub.
So Cross makes a good point here. Having change is fine, but changing the foundation of the game's mechanics for casual fan appeal will only to succeed in destroying your core. And to a point, I agree, but all game types have to evolve at some point. You have to be able to adjust game mechanics. Otherwise, playing the same game the same way all the time can basically erode your game fan base just as well. Like if you take a look at Street Fighter, like the Street Fighter 2 series, they changed the speed. They added boss characters. They added new characters. Over time, that game kind of evolved into its own to have all these different features. They've kind of taken a step back from that, with the exception of adding new characters, and left most of the mechanics the same. They've not really added any real changes. If anything, 5 almost took away things that were in 4 to try to make it appeal to more people. So in that way, they've almost done exactly what you're saying, Cross. They've pulled things back in order to try to appeal to more people. But at the same time, there wasn't enough there for those people to chew on that really made them struggle with it enough. That made it interesting enough for them to stick around for. And even the hardcore players, a lot of them drifted away to things like Tekken because it's more what they were called, or to other fighters like Guilty Gear Strive and Power Rangers Battle for the Grid, because that gave them more flexibility in what they could learn, which is what keeps a lot of people like me coming back. I'm terrible at playing these things online, but I'll go into the lab and I'll beat on something for a while, or I'll go through story mode or go through arcade mode, and I'll have a blast with those, just trying to learn a character and learn how it mixes with another character. Yeah. And that's where I have my fun with it. I've thought about getting into online, but I get so triggered on fighting games sometimes I don't know if I need to do that or not, right? Yeah, I got to get my headspace right and understand that I'm just going to lose for like the first 6 months I play this game, and I'm probably never going to win a match until I start getting my headspace in the right place to be able to compete, right?
Yeah, the journey for me in Tekken was a hard one. It took me years.
Tekken is the one that I look at Tekken and I'm like, this plays just like 3, it plays just like 4, it plays just like 5. I have no business playing this game online because there's people who've been playing this game for 30 years and I already know these mechanics cold. I can't compete with that. I don't have time.
Back to Dragon Ball FighterZ though, which is a game I love playing. There's many different combos and things of that sort, but they also had those auto combos. So, for example, if you hit the button a couple times, you can do like a full stream. So it's excessive. Like, people can pick it up and play it, obviously. Like, my son could play it. But a player like myself that knows what I'm doing, it's not going to work on me. So I think that's a good way to balance it. The other thing I wanted to bring up, since we're on fighting games so much right now, we're talking about the games and their niches and things like that. What irritates me is when a game pulls out, like, the campaign, or gives us like a roster of 10 to 15 characters, and then like here's season pass 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. And I already paid you $65, $70 up front for the game. Now I got to pay you another $20 every couple months for a few characters. There's no campaign in there. Yeah, that's what frustrates me the most.
Yeah, I can see that.
I had to mod a arcade mode for. I had to crack open Unreader and fire up a VM to basically for a Capcom server. No, I wait a minute. Did I just say that? But anyways, I had to do that in order to get an arcade mode, because when Street Fighter V launched, it literally had online mode or like survival mode, and it was absolutely asinine. There's no reason why you should be charging $60 for a online only multiplayer game that had like half the roster, and you basically, if you wanted to get like colored, like different colors for your character, it was absolutely infuriating. So I basically went in and said, okay, well, we can do versus CPU, just write a script that went through a roster of characters or computer versus, and then threw a UI over it and said, look, I made arcade mode. And, you know, it was like, people were like, holy shit, this is incredible, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, that's really sad. Like, this is like a shit guy who just did it on his own time, just, you know, mucking about. And it's like, why didn't Capcom do this? This is not that difficult.
Yeah, they eventually added a story mode on that, but I didn't even buy the game until they had a story mode.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't, because they had ripped so much of the modes out to where it was basically only for the online community that played it. I'm like, you made this so core gamer centric that there's no way you can make money off this, because you make money by people being able to play it offline. And that's where they fell on their face. And Amico, I'm going to pronounce this name so wrong. I apologize. Said it's fitting the first thing you told when you joined the Jekken Zambutsu community was welcome to hell. The challenge makes it that much more rewarding when you do something right. And honestly, that's the appeal of some of these more niche titles. When you're talking about fighting games, when you're talking about stuff like From Software titles, you're talking about some of these harder titles that have mechanics that are more difficult to get around. That's what people are going for. And if you're willing to invest the time in, they're very, very rewarding. If you're like me and you're busy more often than not, and you maybe have an hour or so to do something, except for when you get pulled into podcasts for 3 or 4 hours, you don't have a whole lot of time to get good and get out of scrub mode. So I understand I am a scrub, and I accept that I'm a scrub. It's why I don't often go online, because I can't even get the basics down in offline mode to be able to get to where I feel comfortable even starting to try to compete with somebody online that already understands those basics back and forward. But before we get too much deeper into this, we're gonna get to topic 2.
Moving along.
That first topic should have been fighting games and how to improve them.
Yeah.
Oh god, dude, I can talk fighting games all day. I set up something on my channel at one point, and I still kind of want to do it, even though it fizzled out. I still wanted to do like a fighting game day, where I just go in and everybody beats the living crap out of me because I suck at these and I know it, and just learn to get good at it. And that's why I'm so glad I met you now, man, because that's somebody else in there. And I know SGR would jump in too, and there's a couple other people would jump in, and realistically, it was one of those things that I wanted to start up, and I wanted to just let people beat on each other for a little bit, and then split people up into different skill levels, right? To where the people that are actually good at the game can play against people that are actually good at the game, and the people that aren't so good about it can like get used to chewing their teeth against people that are maybe slightly better than them, but not so much better that they don't get a chance to actually hit anybody. Right, because it's very difficult to learn a fighting game where when you first start out and somebody says go and you're dead. It reminds me of like the one time I tried to play Warcraft 3 online. Yeah. Like the very first time I played that online, within 2 minutes, I kid you not, somebody came in with their hero character, wiped out my entire base, said GG and left, and I'm like, well, I didn't learn how to play this game at all.
Someone dropped the soap.
So I find that funny because like on like I was telling you guys, like me doing Smash and stuff on Sundays, it's like honest to God, that's how I learned how to play new Smash Bros, because I hadn't played Smash Bros since the 64 days. So when I first started playing Smash Bros on the Switch, I just went in there because everybody was like, oh, you should play Smash Bros online. I'm like, all right, cool. And how did I learn? Getting the shit beat out of me week in and week out by the chat every single week. And I'm not saying I am the best by any means, but if you were to watch the first time I played with these guys versus now, I can at least hold my own now.
Damn you, Jim.
And there's something to be said for learning that hard way, but there's a certain level of toxicity in some of those online communities, right? Yeah. You're either in that community or like they're very toxic at the very start. Like I tried doing Killer Instinct online and I told a guy like, good game one time. And he literally told me to shut the fuck up. And I'm like,
now some people are just very
I'm kind of done with this community, right? Yeah. Like if I tell you good game after you literally pounded the crap out of me and I'm not getting caustic with you and you get caustic with me, this is not a good community for me, okay? Because I'm trying to take my lumps here and be congratulatory and, be part of a community.
So, I'll be honest, so it's like I feel like some people are just so on edge in general anymore. Yeah. So, like, they're probably taking it, even though you are trying to just be nice about it. Like, oh, they're being a smart ass. Like, oh, good game. You know what I mean? Like,
I guess I can see that. That's not how I said it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's hard.
Come on, guys.
I know. That's what I'm saying. Like, it's kind of hard. Like with text, like you're not quite sure, and a lot of people, because everyone's wired up so much anymore, they're just all on the defensive. So they're automatically thinking you're just being an asshole when you're really not.
Yeah, they're probably like in like a 10-game losing streak and got to you and like, I can't believe this jerk just said good game.
well, that's the thing,
I mean, he beat the crap out of me, so I mean,
Well, like I have yet to be in an online fighting or competitive community at all where there aren't at least one rotten egg or whatever. Like toxicity is pervasive across. It's welcome to the public. People like
the internet.
It's if you can't punch somebody through the screen, the whole talk shit get hit doesn't fly. Like most of us learned that early on. When you're in somebody's face in real life and you start talking shit, you're going to be digesting your own teeth. Whereas over the internet, you have this anonymity and all this stuff. Yeah. So it's like I was back in the Quake 3 days. I wrote a bot that taunted players, and I'm an asshole. What can I say? But,
I love this very idea.
I wrote a script because Quake 3 Arena had this amazing thing where you could actually write out responses in chat. So there was like if-then conditions, like if the character gets killed, then you can write things like "good game," you know, or "that was awesome." Or, no, so I put in things like "you fucking cheated." He's totally got an aimbot, you know, and all this stuff. And it was just this big and these people were replying to the bot, and then I had to like continually add to the script where the bot would reply to their reply. So I'd look up this big tree of, okay, he replied with, "Fuck you, I'm not cheating, you're cheating." It's like, oh, so you're just projecting now, you know, this huge conversation. And I'm just sitting there in the background, all, you know,
Dance, puppet, dance.
Like, I mean, I sucked. Like, I was okay, you know. I mean, I loved the rocket and I loved the railgun and everything. I was okay, but I would just get my ass kicked a lot. So I threw this bot in, and it was, you know, 0 or whatever. He'd pop in, and all of a sudden, boom, boom, he'd start kicking people's ass, and then he'd lose, start accusing people of cheating, and then all of a sudden, like, you just see all these people in the chat, like, "Fuck, kick that guy, he's a fucking asshole. Fuck him, put him in here." I'm like, I'm hosting the map. That's my
Oh, no.
Like, I get the last laugh.
Exactly.
So yeah, that was me trolling. I mean, that was. But the thing is, though, it's just people in general, though, that there's always going to be like. That's why I like the idea of friends groups, or like when Xbox set up their party system, where you can like the whole power of online gaming is the ability to tune out the people you don't want to talk to. Like, that's not the game manufacturer's job. That's not the publisher's job. That's the only person's job that is you. Like, if you're playing a game and somebody pops on, some 12-year-old starts calling you various racial slurs, because I've heard them all, you know, you can go mute, ban, you know, and no longer, you don't even see them, you don't hear them or anything. And
it's amazing that has gotten pushed towards the developer these days, though.
Well, it's a nanny state.
As people have gotten, and go back to your point of the anonymity of the internet, like, and this goes into Amico's question of like people's ego, right? They've gotten so entitled to being able to say whatever they can say, whatever they want to say, and feeling like they're the biggest badass on the planet, even when they can't hit the broadside of a barn. It's like watching me play McCree in like Overwatch. I may hit somebody and get like a really good shot. That's like 1 out of like every 100 matches when I was really playing the game. I never got very good at that game, right? And people called me shit all the time. I'm like, I don't need you telling me I'm shit. I understand this, but you like trash talking me on my own team, I don't need that, right?
Yep. Oh, you do, because it's going to make you better.
Yeah. It's like my coach. It's like my coach in high school getting in my face and just talking crap to me for 5 minutes and saying, "Well, I can do that to him because I'm the coach." And I'm like, "Thanks, coach. That was highly motivating." I feel so much better about my skill as your wrestler. Thanks.
I have no idea how his house burned down.
Yeah. You know. But I mean, there's that. But a lot of this gets pushed back on the developer too, because people honestly walk in thinking they're the biggest badass in the room. I walk in immediately assuming I'm the worst guy on the team. Like, I have the opposite problem. I could be better than like half the people on the team. And I'm within a game going, "Guys, I'm so sorry." I totally was not pulling my weight, right?
Hey, man, gotta start somewhere. What you gotta do?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, what? You're not already pro of this game that came out 10 minutes ago? Fuck you. Get out of here.
Yeah, right.
That sounds like every Blizzard community I've ever been a part of.
You guys, have you ever played League of Legends?
Yes.
Oh, no way.
I actually used to play League of Legends like years ago. I used to play it all the time for, God, it was probably damn near close to 3 years straight. Like, every day after work, I was on that game for like a good 3 hours every day, damn near. Like, it, God, well, I loved it.
This explains how broken your personality is now, Roy. That is a terrible community.
We now understand.
I've just watched a couple of videos of people playing that, and that was enough for me to go, I will never touch this game.
I don't
ever.
understand. Like, I didn't know what people were talking about. They're like, League of Legends is so toxic. I'm like, it's a game. What the fuck is? What are you talking about?
Sweet summer
it's a fucking video game. Like, I don't know what the hell is going on with these communities. I just go on and try to do my best, and you know, go from there. But like, people, like, after I stopped playing was when, like, it's like, I don't know, maybe about two or so years ago, I was doing a podcast with some other people, and it was getting brought about like how toxic League of Legends was in the community and this. I'm like, Like, I don't get it. It's a game. Like, just play the damn game. Like, I just don't get it. Like, I don't know.
Well,
I don't have that mindset. I just want to play a game, and if I think it's cool, then I'm gonna play it. But anything else, like, I'm not into all that extra nonsense. You know what I mean?
If Ash is going center, you always go low, okay? What the fuck is wrong with you?
See, Rez sounds like somebody that's played League of Legends. He's like the British caustic version. They're really polite while they're tearing you apart.
Well,
I
will say I had some anger moments when I played, because like my one buddy who knew how to play, and it's almost like he just did stuff because he knew he was going to piss me off. And like, he's like for those that don't know what I'm about to reference to, you can look it up, but he was soloing a turret. Like, there was no minions or not, just trying to go after it on his own. I'm like, dude, what the fuck are you doing? I'm like, get the hell out of there. And I'm like, I'm sort of pinging on the map because, like, not only is he getting hit by the turret, but he's about to get ganked. And I'm like, dude, what are you doing? And we're even talking on the mic. Feeding. And he's like, what? I don't understand. Oh, I'm dead now. And I'm like, you dumb mother.
Oh, well, guess you got to carry the
live and learn, man. Live and learn.
I'm like, and I even told him, he's like, why are you getting so mad? It's like, because you know what to do. You're just an idiot. Like, what the hell is wrong with you? You know, these games take like an hour to play, and yet you're screwing around.
Oh, God.
Man, that's like me back in like Halo days. Like, all right, yeah, jump in my Warhog. Jump out of the car as the car goes over the edge. Bye, guys.
See, and then there's people like this, which I feel is like me doing this unintentionally, but he's doing it intentionally. But he may be the one person I'm actually better on the map, and I'm only better at the map on because he's intentionally playing bad. And I'm here trying my hardest. He's over going,
No, they're like, oh, it's not right. Come back. Oh, yeah, sweet. Throw, knock you down. All right, take it. Go.
All right, so topic 2, Indies versus AAA games. Yeah. Oh, my God. This has been really fun so far, by the way.
So Indies versus AAA, from the other side, from the non-consumer side, one thing that really was disillusioning for me, and everyone should know this when they're getting into the game development or into that industry, you're never making your game. And as soon as you dispel yourself of that delusion, you actually start feeling better about some of the games you're working on. And I've worked with people that, like, I've worked mainly in AAA, so, but I've worked with people that have worked on, like, Barbie's Dream Horse thing and all this stuff. And I'm like, how the hell do you go from that to Defiance, which was like an online shooter game, or Firefall, like another online shooter game, or Assassin's Creed or something? And they're like, dude, I just wanted to get into the industry. Like, you don't work on what you want to work. You're working for somebody else, essentially. Whereas indies generally are, three of their mates who get together in their garage and say, hey, look, we want to make a game, and they're making their game. They are the auteurs, they are the people that are making the shit that they want to make. And that's why, exactly, passion project. And that's where I'm not seeing in AAA, there's no passion anymore because there's no room for it. You can't, it's a liability. Everything has to be, exactly. Everything is corporatized. Everything is about bottom line profits. There's risk aversion, so there's no experimentation. Everything is, well, what did, like, when I was a game designer, I literally had conversations with, my superiors that were saying, okay, well, what did so-and-so do? Or what can we extrapolate or leverage from game example A and use that in ours? Like they'd have the lift pitches and they'd be like, oh, our game is basically Halo with a little bit of Borderlands in it. And it's like, so you're not saying you're making your own game, you're making somebody else's game, and what's the point of the designers at that point? They're just ripping off other people's designs. Like, I haven't seen a new genre in, hell, almost 20 years. From
the AAA.
Like, well, yeah. Like when was the last new genre I can think of required plastic instruments? Like, that was the last time where I was like, holy shit, I've never seen this before.
I would slightly argue that From Software has made like an action RPG subgenre of their own that's been within the last 20 years. And I think that's partially why it's been so successful is because, and it's kind of starting to peter out a little bit, except for the very core audience, because people have already determined whether or not they like that gameplay type or not.
Yep.
And the ones that do, they've still got their core crowd, right? And each one is slightly different. Like Sekiro looks and plays pretty significantly different from, like, say, Dark Souls, but the base concept is still the same, right? But you got so many sandbox games.
The Ubisoft.
Yes, and I was
God.
bringing them up specifically because, like, Far Cry, Assassin's Creed, like, you take Far Cry and you make it over the shoulder third person, and you got basically Assassin's Creed with guns. It's not
Never thought
that
about it that
different. It's
Same thing
really
with
not. When you think about, like, Valhalla, and you look at Far Cry, are they really that different?
Yeah, don't forget the guy with the phone. I forgot what it's
True.
called. Yeah,
Watch Dogs.
Yeah.
Watch Dogs, yes.
Yeah.
Watch Dogs is very similar, only you're using hacking as a mechanic, right? But it's their same kind of by-the-numbers sandbox that they've come into. And then EA is the same way with some of their games. Then you got, like, your Call of Duties and stuff like that are basically year after year. And a lot of this stuff started in the 90s with sports games because they realized serial games like that with slight changes to rosters would sell. And you could
Malibu
sell it year
Stacy.
after year after year, right? And so that was kind of the genesis of the whole thing, because up until then, you might have a game come out that had one or two sequels, and then it kind of petered out, and you had to come up with a new idea, right?
Did you
It
ever
might play mechanically similar, but at least looked different and had a couple of different mechanics. But once sports games started taking off and things got more, bigger companies started forming, you're right. The risk aversion of it and the fact that they already have a formula that works. And I'm betting somewhere on there is like some sort of guideline formula that somebody has posted up
Yeah.
of what they do, particularly at Ubisoft. I guarantee you it's like part of some
Company
sort of
policy.
like, yeah, it's part of some company policy of like, you must have this, you must have this, you must be able to do this, you must have this, right?
Creativity
there.
be damned.
Right.
Well, yeah,
Right.
I spoke. I was in contact with the writing team on Assassin's Creed, and yeah, it was. I mean, there was a whole Charlie Foxtrot going on with Ubisoft around, like, so Patrice Deslitz or whatever, the creative director or lead of the original Assassin's Creed. Apparently, he had creative differences, so they fired him. You know, the original Assassin's Creed was basically Desmond's meta story, and it was supposed to follow through history to Desmond. And when Patrice left, if you noticed, around the time of Black Flag, suddenly it was like, what the hell happened? Well, there was an entire new team in there.
Yeah.
The scary part is Patrice went to another studio. Ubisoft acquired that studio and then fired him again.
Wow, really?
Yeah, I mean, I feel so bad for that. It's like,
Well,
at that point,
That's why I think it's important that, you know, we really need to, like, emphasize the importance of indies, because, like, you can't fire an indie guy.
Yes.
He's like, this is my game, dude.
yeah, I'm going to take my PC and leave.
Yeah, because, like, that's what I was talking with my friend Cross about this a while back, about how all these companies are just, you know, they get so big, they acquire another company, squeeze it out, and then get rid of it. Like Criterion, the guys that made the Burnout games, because like those games were good, but now they're dead. And Dead Space, you know, they'll sit here and they'll take a game franchise that started good, get to the third game after the, you know, once they've acquired the studio, corporatize it by the third game flops because no one likes it. And then they kill it off and dies, and they bring it back. So, you know, like the Dead Space remake. And now they're talking about now a selling point. Look, there won't be any microtransactions. We know better. We've learned from our mistakes. I'm like,
Yeah.
Oh, EA never learns. Don't even.
Yeah.
I am happy they're bringing back the Dead Space games, though, for real. I agree, 3 was not the best. I think the biggest problem with AAA games is, like, for Assassin's Creed and Call of Duty, the ones you guys were talking about, every year, boom, 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 boom. Yeah, I'm burnt out 7 games ago. I've already played it.
Yeah.
Like, new coat of paint, I just...
That's exactly
I fell
my
off the
thing.
train for a while.
Like, I don't. The sad thing is like I don't know a whole lot about indie games. The irony is, like, I was kind of talking to Raven in the chat on my end here. I said a lot of newer games. I said, to be honest, man, I said I got, you know, like you said, pretty much burned out. It's like, where's the originality? It's like everything's the fucking same. It's like, okay, it's the same concept, but you put different skins on shit, basically. Like, where's the originality? Like everything anymore that's so shoved down your throat are like first person shooters, sports games. Like those are like your top two basically, and then other stuff. But I mean, for the most part, it's like that's what they just focus in on. It's like, and then like it's hard. I don't want to say it's hard, but off the top of my head, I haven't gotten around to playing a good RPG in a while, and I know part of that's my own fault because of just time. But I'm not quite sure if you guys could add to this. Like, as far as from when I was playing RPGs, it seemed like they weren't, for a lack of a better term, they just weren't as good as like probably like ones that you were playing like in the 2000s.
Yeah, that kind of goes back to what I say like previous generations. Like, I feel like gaming has already peaked. 6th gen, it peaked. Like, it's been downhill since then. Like, some would argue that 7th gen was good. It started good and then it died, because that's when the whole industry became like superly, corporatized. It's like the advent of DLC. Like, there's plenty of directions we could have gone, but unfortunately the focus went towards high graphics and pay. How much money can we can now milk money now that the internet is like sustainable enough for us to like make live service a thing.
Yeah.
But in 6th gen, like the 360, but the original Xbox, PlayStation 2, the GameCube, me and my friend, we talked about it a lot. Like, there was never a time like back then. Like, if you got one of those 3 consoles, you were pissed that you missed out on something on the other consoles.
Yep.
Nowadays, it's like, I don't even care. Like, if I get an Xbox Series X, I mean, I might just get a PC or the PS.
Which controller do you want to use?
Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah,
so since we have a good transition, since you've already talked about games peaking, we'll go into this and we'll go into remakes too. The number of remakes. But since we'd already moved past remakes into this, we'll go to this first. Honestly, and I'll start on this one because I think where it's going to go is kind of where corporate isn't right now, and that's the indie and the VR scene. The corporate America part doesn't see the profit in VR yet, and so there's a lot of creative IPs coming out in there, a lot of new experiences that you can't do in a 2D medium that you can do in this kind of medium because it's so much more immersive. It's not one that I'm particularly as enthusiastic about, but even from an outsider perspective, I can look at like the escape rooms and things like Beat Saber and, Moss and things like that and go, wow, you guys are really trying to take a new angle on what's there and trying to bring new experiences. And even more AAA experiences are kind of given like a bit of a boost there, primarily because of things like Resident Evil 7. I wouldn't even attempt to play that in VR. I would probably crap myself like 7 times in one sitting just trying to play that, right? And then AAA games, for the same reasons that we've been talking about, those are passion projects with people coming up with ideas or mechanics or things like that they're not sure would really work, right? That they're trying to bring out. And Kickstarter is one good place to do that, but another good place is just Steam. Steam has a lot of cool titles that are out there, and some of them are really cheap, and so it's really easy to take a gamble on them and see what's out there. You've got a lot of really good Metroidvania style games, and then you've got things like Shovel Knight, which are Kickstarter games, Bloodstained, which is a Kickstarter game, and then you've got bad ones like Mighty Number 9. But let's get everybody else's opinion in there.
I'll say this: like when it comes to like indie games, like, it's another topic me and my friend talked about. People have to be willing to look, because unfortunately nowadays everything's curated, and they're not going to push creative stuff at you. They're going to push the stuff they want you to see, like the AAA. Like when Cyberpunk dropped, all of the all the ads you saw for Cyberpunk, it was nonstop, a constant bombardment of Cyberpunk. The hype for Cyberpunk is real. Same thing happened with No Man's Sky, and those games came out, they were trash. And then everyone was like, oh, damn. And then when the next new game gets pushed, they're like, oh, I'm excited for this now. It's like, dude, like, you just kind of have to, like, disconnect yourself from, like, being curated. Because, like, the thing now, a lot of the games that I've been, like, looking into recently, my friend told me about, he's like, yeah, these games you have to look for because you won't find them. like Trials of Mana. That's an RPG I've been playing, really been enjoying it. And the way you find it is that you go looking, because that game isn't just going to pop up on your feed.
You know what's funny? I'm coming up with like a third-party game list for the Switch, and that one's on there. I haven't picked it up yet, but I looked at it and went, God, I really do want to put this on this list because that looks like a cool little title.
Yeah.
And it's Secret of Mana, but kind of more grown up, right? And it looks like it's going to be kind of cool. It's not the same.
I'm about halfway through. It's pretty sweet.
Yeah. So there's titles on there like that, and ones that pop out that didn't even know they got a remaster, like Lumines Remastered. I didn't even know that came back out. I love that thing on my PSP. I didn't even know that popped up.
Yeah, like that's what I mean. Like you have to put in the work, and because unfortunately this generation, everyone we're pretty lazy, and we just kind of sit back and allow things to come to us, and you don't realize a lot of stuff you're getting is propaganda or BS. And when you like the true gaming experience, because it's easy to say that gaming now is trash, and it is, but there are a lot of good experiences out there. You just have to go find them because they're not going to find you. I think there was one story. What was it? The Ori in the Forest. This happened back when No Man's Sky was coming out, because it got all that press and stuff. The guy from Hello Games was on, Stephen Colbert or whatever, and the developer behind Ori and the Blind Forest, he had a opportunity to have his game on the front cover of a magazine. But when his game was coming out around the same time as No Man's Sky, so the magazine publisher was like, "Look, man, we know we gave you the front cover, but No Man's Sky is really hot right now. Do you mind if we switch it?" At the time, he was like, "Yeah, sure. I mean, I'm excited for it too. It looks great." And then the game came out and it flopped, and then he was pissed off. He was like, "So I stood aside for these guys to come in and ruin. Like that could have been that was my opportunity. Of course, it could be like a blessing, but at the time, it kind of shows like." When it comes to stuff like that, you just have to be willing to do your own research. Look for the games that you're interested in. Because Trials of Mana took me back to Evolution 2, Far Off Promise. Like that's how it looked to me. And so I was like, yeah, this is a game you got to look for. It's not gonna come to you. You got to go to it.
Yeah, and some of those games eventually gain traction because enough people get them, and then you have some of the more mainstream YouTube channels that keep doing references to them. And people start to check them out more. But usually it can almost be too little too late because people have not grabbed onto them when they were popular. And so it's still considered a failure. But it became a cult classic, right?
So I think it varies because failures and success differentiate depending on what the standard is for who's making the game. Like let's say an indie game selling 100,000 copies may be a success for them. But a failure, everyone's kind of used to a game failing because it's not popular or everyone's not talking about it. It's like, well, it doesn't necessarily mean it failed. It just means that it's over here in this corner. It's doing well with this core audience. Like if there are people that are happy with it, then who's to say that's a failure, really? So,
For me, where I see games in 10 years from now, though, is I think that just like when the dinosaurs faced extinction, there were mammals that came from the ashes of those dinosaurs, the dinosaurs being AAA, the mammals being indies. I think that's what will survive, mainly because you keep hearing this bullshit story about how game development is actually getting more expensive. And from somebody that worked in the industry, I can tell you right now that is a complete lie. The hardware, the software suites, all of the development tools have become more and more accessible. There's no way you can convince me that making a game in Unity is more expensive today than programming in C++ with no SDK back 20 years ago. And with these with the software being cheaper, with the tools being easier to use, the cost of development has actually gone down. Sure, the complexity has gone up, like networking and all that stuff. Yeah, you're going to get some costs there. But the reason why budgets have been ballooning out of proportion is because of marketing and because of Hollywood voice acting. Those two things need to fucking go.
That's what was on my mind is the Hollywood voice actors. Because, I mean, even getting them on the cheap, you're probably looking at like $10 million or your budget or more just to get them to come in and do like maybe 5 to 10 minutes of dialogue.
You gotta get Keanu Reeves, guys.
Yeah. Well, there's a story behind how Keanu Reeves' presence fucked up Cyberpunk.
I feel like it's obvious with the way the game plays.
Well, it was like an 11th hour edition, and then all of the budget just went over to getting him in there, and nothing to ding against Keanu Reeves because the guy's awesome, but it just that's what happens though to these games now, is that these big AAA games are risk averse, they're creatively bereft. They come out bug ridden. I've seen Roach Motels with fewer bugs in them. They're incomplete. Like I actually, here's a horror story. I actually got into an argument with one of my superiors when I was working for one of the studios, where we had just gotten out of a meeting where we were discussing what we were going to extract from the game to give to GameStop, Best Buy, Target, or whatever online retailers for pre-order bonuses.
Yep.
So these were things that we already had in the game, and we were pulling out to, stealing from the customer essentially to put as bonuses or whatever for pre-order incentives or DLC or whatever. And the argument stemmed from the fact that we said we were giving like red armor or something stupid to, part of the pre-order bonus. If you bought the collector's edition pre-order, you get this really awesome red armor. Well, I was testing the game because as designers, that half of our job was QA, which sucked, but we had a lot of camaraderie with the QA. Those guys get treated poorly, but we're going through this shit, and all of a sudden I get the collector's edition code, put it in, and the armor that I got was this brown like camouflage, and I was like, the fuck is this? Like, if I were a customer and I just blew $80 on this fucking physical thing, and I got this, whatever, and it's not what I was, advertised. So I go to my superior about this, and he's like, yeah, whatever. So I had to do the over Dark Helmet's helmet and tell his boss, and his boss was like, holy shit, like, we are going to get backlash. And then Angry Joe did a review of our game, and everybody in the back of the room was just like, yep, we totally agree with everything Joe said.
Saw this coming a mile away.
Yeah, and like, we, but that's the AAA, and that is a dinosaur industry. Like, you have no say. You have all of these just too many gears in motion, too many cooks in the kitchen. The whole thing's just, like a Charlie Foxtrot. Whereas if you're looking at what I would foresee in the future, and I could be way off, so, take this with a big boulder of salt, is that games might be going more of a crowdfunding, more digestible route, episodic releases.
Sorry, I had to make Rez full screen for a minute, partially because he's the one talking for me right now. And two, I'm like, is that your cat? Is that a cat? What is that?
Up on the multicade, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, the cat is totally bombing you right now.
Hey, what are you doing, mate?
Look who's getting trolled now.
Exactly.
Nice.
Sorry to break your train of thought. My bad.
No worries. Well, I'll just finish this rant. I foresee things like crowdfunding and kind of on-demand gaming becoming more of more of what the future will bring, because eventually these games as a service, these things that we're seeing with like Microsoft's awesome Game Pass, is going to be disincentived to these big publishers.
Oh,
he froze. He froze.
Yeah, I'm still here, bro.
Yeah, we're still here. Rez froze.
Oh man.
Rez!
No.
Rez, no! No, Rez, no!
The cat got the best of him.
The cat totally pulled the plug on him.
That's probably what happened.
You could freaking up the audience by putting him big screen.
I want to know what he was saying.
So hopefully he doesn't have a Christmas vacation scenario where the cat was chewing on the cord. And,
God! Oh no! Fried pussycat!
I think he's back.
Wait, he's moving again.
Oh.
He's moving again. He was for a second.
He
Hang on.
shifted.
Am I back online?
You're kind of back online. You're a little bit better now.
Sound like a Decepticon, but yeah.
Yeah.
Soundwave superior.
You see, man, I was getting to the truth, man, and they shut me
They
down.
had to cut him off.
Some man trying to shut me down, man.
Yeah. But
Yeah, he's saying too much. Pull the plug.
Quick!
He secretly Nick muted you. That's what happened, Rez. Went on too long.
I totally did not take a payout to freeze you.
What's this little red dot?
That's nothing, man. It's nothing. Bart. He knows.
well, just to finish the kind of the rant, and I apologize, is that I foresee games being more of the on-demand system, where the services that we're currently seeing, things like Xbox Game Pass, they're disincentivizing the publishers from making big games, because those big games are not seeing individual sales figures anymore. So Game Pass is awesome for the consumer, but for the publisher, it's a bit shit, because they're not being paid oodles of cash like they are for individual sales of games. So I would foresee games being a bit smaller and more crowdfunded based in their on-demand, or, hey, is there any interest in this product, and have it get kickstarted or whatever. And then that would be like, and I think what it would be is it'll be victory through attrition. Because if you look on Steam, or if you look on the Switch marketplace or whatever, there's so much glut there now. There is so much, like, when you go looking for these games, you're like going like diamond mining. You're in this coal mine and you don't see shit in there. So most people are lazy. So the path of least resistance, if it's not curated or brought to them, then nobody's ever going to go venture out for it. I mean, there will be a few people, but the majority of these experiences are things that are being pushed to the user, except for when you have like YouTube influencers and things like that.
I was about to say, don't you think that's kind of where like YouTube starts to kind of come like a good bastion of being able to find that? Because like I've thought about starting up something with like the Steam Deck and all that coming out, going out and finding the more inexpensive titles on, say, like Steam that I think are actually pretty solid, doing a small bit on them, maybe 15, 20 minutes, or even playing through the whole game, and then going, hey, if you're getting a Steam Deck or you're just getting into like PC games, like here's a couple of inexpensive like indies that you may have to dig for, but if you do, they may be well worth your while. And here's a little bit about those, right?
Yep.
And that's where like individual gamer awareness has to come into play, right? That's where YouTube starts to come in, because you're not going to get it off of like IGN. You're not going to get it off of like Video Game Chronicles or any of those.
Well,
Go ahead, Afro.
Like one place that I frequent a lot is Niche Gamer. Like they cover a lot of like stuff that's outside they cover some mainstream things, but they cover a lot of things that that pique your interest, like things you would have never thought about. Like they do reviews of certain games, so just kind of shout them out there, because it's where I get most of my information when it comes to gaming. I don't do IGN, I'll do GameStop or GameSpot, because they're all like more of the same. And I think there's been a few reviews from IGN that have been straight up plagiarized from YouTubers. So
I can believe that.
If you guys want to hear, I had a boss who told me that he wrote the review for the game that he had developed and submitted it to PC Gamer.
Here's a couple of other things. We're going to go into Cross's comment because it's been sent there ever. And he says it's because they're trying to be mainstream instead of servicing their core fans. You need to service your niche. To an extent, you're right, but you also have to broaden that niche, because they need and want more revenue, right? So you have to find a way to still cater to that niche, but somewhat make it accessible to a broader audience at the same time, which in my mind involves slowly adding in mechanics that both the core audience and new will like, but will make it slightly more accessible for new players. Like Dragon Ball Z did it by allowing you to do like just tap a button and do auto combos. That was a turnoff to some new players, but to a lot of new people it was a godsend. And for a lot of people that were good at the game, it wasn't that much of a hindrance. Killer Instinct added something like that in later seasons from Iron Galaxy, where they added like combo help and stuff like that, with like auto linkers and stuff like that would be automatically generated to help you get a feel for the game. Didn't replace skill for the game, but it made it a little bit more accessible for the mainstream. But those things have to be executed very carefully. Otherwise you do alienate your niche. And
it's a balancing act. Like there's
really
no right way to do it. But I think the thing that's important that some of these game companies need to consider is like, what type of success do you want? Do you want to grind out for long-term success because that's what builds franchises, or do you just want it all up front right now? Because that's why Tekken is the most successful fighting game right now, because it started out the way it was, and it just built up and retained its identity for the longest time. And because of that, it is the most successful fighting game. Like, yeah, it's really hard. It's really hard, but it's still, despite all of the hardships that players go through to get good at it, it's still rewarding. It's rewarding for the player and for the developer because that game is still.
But they've also added a heavy-handed help for the new player too, and the fact of when you're getting beat up, as soon as you start flashing, you can use like an ultimate rage ability, basically, that'll take 2/3 of the other person's life and give you a last-ditch effort to try to salvage yourself.
Yeah.
Now, is that going to save most players? Probably not, but it gives them a second wind of a chance of trying to come back in a match, and you can get that every round that you're playing if you're on the back foot, right? And it's just 2 buttons to push to execute one of them.
Yeah, it's so satisfying to see one of those whiff.
Yeah,
it's like I'm back in here.
Yeah.
But I wanted to look at Oni's comment. Like,
yes, that was the next one I wanted to go to as well, because both of these were really good, and I thought they needed to be talked about.
Yeah, because I got beef with Shenmue.
I honestly looked at the whole series and went, "This doesn't even look fun to me." Like every time I see gameplay from Shenmue, I'm like, "Great for those of you guys that like it. This does not look fun to me. I'm sorry, it just doesn't."
Well,
I'm looking for a sailor.
Yeah. Do you know anything about the incident?
Yeah.
I feel like that's definitely a game you have to play for its time. Like when the Dreamcast came out, I unfortunately skipped out on it. I had the N64, PS1, then the PS2 still on. I went back and tried to play it now on my Dreamcast. It doesn't click with me either, I'll be honest with you. But one day I do want to grind through the rest of it just to experience it for myself.
Yeah.
The third one I heard really bad things about, so I can't speak on that, guys.
Yeah, it is because like I love Shenmue. Shenmue was like it was my a childhood to a certain degree because it was like a slice of life. It was like a life simulator, and you could fight. And I was like, I can't fight, but I can fight in Shenmue. And like, and it was a lot of fun. It's just that like Oni said, like when it came to its comeback because it was like dormant for 15 years and. Me and Oni, we love that game a lot. When the third one came out, I was excited for it because I'm like, oh boy, it's it's kickstarted, and I'm like, okay, it may not be that good because Yu Suzuki is, he's kind of old school, so I wouldn't be surprised if he, has dated mechanics in there, and he does. But the problem, like the reason why I didn't even touch Shenmue 3. Like, I did because Oni made me play it. Thanks. But I only played it for like a few minutes.
If you liked it, it's got to be a genuine gratitude, right?
Yeah, but I just knew like the thing is that corporate got its hands on it because like it was kickstarted, but then somewhere along the lines of if I remember correctly, Epic acquired it. Like it was a
They did that to a couple other games. Didn't they do that to like Metro Exodus or something like that too?
Yeah. And so
that really pissed a lot of people off on Kickstarter because they removed a lot of where they were going to get it on their platform because I know people wanted it on Steam, and then they got pushed to like the Epic Store, and it became a whole thing.
Yeah, because the Epic Store like it has this list of issues which I'm not very fond of. They're trying to think we'll get to that later. But the problem with Shenmue 3 was that like this was a game being brought back by the fans because when they first unveiled like, hey, it's Shenmue 3, even before they even showed the title card, you saw a few flower petals coming, people went ballistic. They're like, yes, finally, the end of the chapter, like we can finally figure out what happened at the end because like you're left on a cliffhanger for 15 goddamn years. And then only for it to come back and get seized by Epic is like, well, I mean, we knew you wanted it on Steam, but now you got to get it through our shitty launcher, which is at the time was incomplete. And
They've still got to fix that thing, man. There's still features missing from it that Steam has.
Yeah.
Like, I don't understand why they haven't done that yet.
Yeah.
Like, they've had plenty of time now. At first, I was giving them some slack. But they've got tons of money coming in now, and they could do that. It's so easily.
Yeah. So go ahead.
Epic Marketplace. I'm sorry. That is incredibly anti-consumer.
Dude, the only reason I have it's because they give me free games every week. I look for the new free game and see if
pretty
I
much
want
why I
it.
keep
It's the only reason I
anything
still have it.
It's like I'll purchase it with probably 0 and 10. I'm playing it just on the off chance. I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to go and see what I have, and maybe I'll just play a random game today. And that's it.
Well, Epic has lost so much money courting developers to like bribing them essentially to make it a platform exclusive. PC gaming is not about platform exclusivity.
Thank you. Thank you. It's like they were bringing that, like, oh yeah, we're consoleizing your PC experience. I'm like, thanks, I hate it. And then, you know, not to mention, there are other aspects about Epic that I don't like. For example, its influence on the games that they acquire. Like, for example, Cross brought this up to me because I didn't know about it at the time. But the latest Samurai Showdown, it was an Epic exclusive, even though they first said it wasn't, so whatever. And then when it came to Steam, it came with this thing where it had to be always online to work. This DRM, which they think is a remnant from being part of Epic's platform or whatever. And so that's one of the reasons why the new King of Fighters isn't. You know, I was like, oh my, I thought that was really strange because, you know, it's the same developer making both of these games. When the Samurai Showdown came to Steam, it got review bombed because it's like, yo, what's this DRM shit? Like, this wasn't here before, like in earlier games.
It's like Outriders. Outriders has to always be online, even if you're playing solo. And it specifically goes back to it, Destiny, all those games are basically games as a service so they can do their DRM. That's the only reason for it.
Yeah, same thing with Back 4 Blood. Because, like, I was trying the beta the other day and my computer was screaming for no reason in the menus. I was like, I wasn't playing the game. My computer was like, Super Saiyan level 3. I'm like, bro, what are you doing?
Doom Eternal does it too. Doom Eternal will complain if you're not connected to Bethesda servers constantly. A friend of mine was losing his mind over that. And he just couldn't stand it. But yeah, it's a real thing, and that's a whole other topic that we could talk about for like an hour. But I've avoided Samurai Showdown because I'm not a Samurai Showdown. I've never really messed with the series. And I know I would like never even get a chance to learn that game. I'd come in, somebody be like, "Oh look, yeah, I know this move. Slash! Oh look, I'm dead." Well, that was fun.
It's interesting. I played it once, and I was like, I never played any Samurai Showdown. That was the first one I played.
It looks brilliant, dude, and it's got so many fun, cool characters. But I'd have to learn that with somebody else that would give me a chance to actually figure it out. Somebody have to be like, okay, I'm gonna hang back and let you try some stuff.
I was surprised. Like, I died in one hit. I was like, oh, all right. I guess it's realistic. If I got slashed with the sword, I guess I'd be dead too.
Yeah. Somebody cuts you, stabs you like right in the heart, and you're probably gonna die. I mean,
walk it off.
That's the real. Just walk it off. Rub some dirt on it. You're fine.
Oh yeah. Well, I remember that series of Bushido Blade on the PS1 from Squaresoft.
Vaguely.
Yeah, it was a one.
I vaguely remember Bushido Blade one. That was very much like Samurai Showdown, if I recall.
Yeah. Well, it was a one-hit death game, and it even had like Bushido principles to it, where like somebody, if you attack them when they're not ready, then it was a dishonorable kill, and like they can actually like lift themselves up to a higher level or whatever because it was uneven playing fields. Before you hear that click, if you just like somebody's like climbing up a ladder, and you're like, ha ha, and it's just like dishonorable. But I don't know. I mean, it's a very niche game like that because it's, you know, you really need to know what you're doing. It's not a button masher. You could sit there and hey, you know, and somebody just goes and kills you with one hit. And,
yeah. And games like that, I don't mind games like that being out there. I may not jump into them just because I'm not sure I'm ready for that type of game, but it doesn't make me any less happy that they're there, right?
Yeah.
Because the fact that they're there adds diversity to the game market. It's the same way that I'm happy that, you know, like the Amico is trying to come out. Because like one of my biggest things, and we'll go ahead and move to the remakes here in just a second after I get done with my little tirade, is like, and I've said this multiple times, one of my biggest times for gaming that I had the most fun with, I think, was like the 90s to early 2000s, because you had 9 to 10 consoles at the same time. And you didn't have all these series of games, and things weren't basically serialistic games that you had coming out all the time. You had all sorts of crazy ideas going on because you had 9 platforms. You had to find something distinct to draw somebody to your platform, right? You didn't have these titles that spanned every platform, and it's just like you guys were saying, what type of controller do you want to play with? Which one's the most comfortable, right? So that alone is why I'm happy that some of these games are out there, even though they may not make big gangbuster money, but they still exist. The fact that somebody was willing to greenlight them and bring them out gives me some hope for the gaming industry doing something unique, right? And taking a chance on something. Because like 5 years ago, nobody would have greenlit Samurai Showdown. Like, no way. They would have been like, wait, one hit kills? Get the hell out of here. That'll never sell. You know, when fighting games started taking off again, they're like, why not? Right? And it sold pretty well. So
until that stink with EA, or not EA, but Epic. But,
yeah. Well, I mean, it still sold well on the other platforms. It's just not necessarily selling well on Steam, right?
Yeah. I just wish they keep it up, because like nowadays when they come out, you want to maintain a good positive vibe throughout its releases on whatever platform it is. Like when you start doing any shady stuff like exclusive deals when you said you would, and then the DRM that follows, it's gonna hurt like the longevity of the game over time. But oh well. Hopefully King of
I was
Fighters.
looking at Riot's comment right there too. So that was where I was going to lead gaming in the future. Honestly, I think the Xbox Game Pass are heading more down that route. Personally, my biggest problem with it, I think nowadays it's more acceptable for a developer to be like, all right, yeah, I'm going to release it. Here's a day one patch for 50 gigs. Download it. Or we'll fix it down the road. Or, all right, yeah, there's another update coming, guys. I'm not trying to just pick on Cyberpunk here because, for example, I put Halo on the Xbox the other day, and I'm like, it's 120 gigs to download? All right, well, I guess I'm playing it tomorrow.
Wow. Dude, it's like almost 200 gig.
Is it really? Okay, I don't play Call of Duty. I
last time
stopped
I
that
looked at
years
it was
ago.
158 gig. I'm like, so basically you have a PlayStation 4 just for Warzone and you buy
For
Cyberpunk
one game,
games?
that's it.
Yeah, so that's why I can't get in with the whole digital future thing, man. Because like I prefer physical. Because
It doesn't matter
they're
now
all
though.
over my room,
Warzone,
like,
even if you were to
I don't
buy
like
physical, it'll hold at most 50 gig. So you're still downloading all of it, and realistically, you're installing all of it anyway. The CD is just your key to access it. It does not matter anymore.
But that's why I think we just need to kind of like backtrack it, because now I think a lot of that stuff they're putting on there is filler. Like, yeah, these games won't fit because we put a lot of bullshit in there. But yeah, because like back in the day, like I think in the early like 7th gen, I think those games could fit on a DVD drive, which only held I think. How many gigs?
I think it's like 5, maybe 10 gig.
Yeah, I was thinking like 5 or 6.
Yeah,
and some of the best games, and kind of going into the remakes, all the remakes from back in the day are from like 6th gen, 5th gen, and like the remakes for those games are such high demand because they were great games made within limited hardware. That's why I think there's a video I'm working on later called the advantages of limited hardware, because now the mainstream push is for everything to be like high fidelity graphics, 4K, no compromise, even though you have to compromise on the console. But
you even have to compromise on a PC because a lot of PCs with the stuff they're trying to do, and PC's been notorious for this. Like Doom used to come out and crush modern computers and drop them to like 30 frames a second, unless you put it on medium. Crysis was bad about it. Far Cry was bad about it. Realistically, consoles made that less of an issue to where PCs have to upgrade less because they build for the console first and then they add in the niceties for the PC. So it's a lot less extreme. But that's what pushed graphics card sales back in the day because people wanted to be able to hit 60 frames a second and you had to buy the next gen card to do it.
Otherwise, you kiss your current card goodbye.
Uh-huh.
But I think just some downside, like as far as like, well, never mind, I'll take it back. There's no need for downsizing. I think it's just AAA is going to go in this direction. And I think for gaming to survive, long term, it's got to go like more niche. Like I just lost the word. But the smaller games, indie games. Because there's no way like their whole project is set within a limitation because like they don't have the manpower, so we're not even going to bother making a game that's 50 gigabytes. A lot of the best indie titles barely scratch 5 or 10, and that's still within the the range of original DVD or old physical hardware.
Well, not only that, but there's one major thing that we need to consider. We're not Asia. Like, when I was in Japan, like internet speeds were insane.
Yeah.
And when you live in like the flyover states as they call them or whatever here in America, like you have these rural areas that are barely getting like dial-up speeds from like 20 years ago.
Exactly.
How I just bought a $60 product, I put it in my $500 console, and now I can't play the game because it has 150 fucking gigs to download. That's not gonna happen. Like, I'm done, you know?
Yeah, because it's too much work. Because like the whole future of digital would be great if everywhere was South Korean speed internet.
Yeah, too right.
But
yeah,
that's not the case. So it's like, I mean, you guys can push it all you want, but unless you live in like a mega city, you have no chance.
Well, and even in Colorado, this kind of ties into like Rhea's saying, like games have to tone things down to an extent, right? Because streaming speeds are streaming speeds. Like trying to stream something like Destiny on YouTube is actually quite difficult, even with my PC. Because while I can stream it, OBS is kind of chugging and skipping frames here and there because I can only set it to so much of a kilobyte per second because that's all YouTube will allow. Yeah. And Twitch won't even allow it to you until you're like an affiliate or a partner to allow you to go up to higher speeds. So you're still doing like 720p, but the game's in like 4K. So you're trying to take something 4K, transcode it down to 720p, and then stream it out to your audience. And so, and if you're playing it ultra wide like I do a lot of times, that's even worse because now you got to put it in 1080p, figure out the screen size, and figure out all this stuff. It becomes like literal work to try to make it work so that you can stream it and have it run to where it doesn't look like something that somebody's just going to like vomit trying to watch you play it because it's just too nauseating, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Like things were just simpler back in the day. I don't mean to sound like a boomer, but back in my day.
Damn you, kids.
Dude, I'm 44. I already hit boomer. I gave up.
Get off my lawn. Yeah, it was legitimately better back then. That's why I think revitalizing the gaming industry will have to happen from within. It has to be its own subculture. I don't want to say like fix the gaming industry because like fuck it, I don't care. About
You're gonna have. Here's what I think is gonna have to happen on that, and then you guys can expand on this. You're gonna have to have these companies that come together. That when somebody like EA or Activision or 2K comes to them and says, "Hey, we want to buy you," they go, "No."
Yep.
Yeah.
They're gonna have to say no, and they're gonna have to stay on their own path. So you're gonna have somebody that's not gonna be lured in by that offer. That starts to shake up that industry, and their games are going to have to do well, and they're going to have to start growing as a company, and grow on their own, not because they got bought by a larger conglomerate, right?
Yeah,
and not be tied into people like Tencent, which owns everybody now, basically.
That's incredibly concerning, by the way, too. Tencent owning that's a Chinese company that owns the majority of American game developers.
They own almost all game development, period, not just American game development, just game development, period. And you don't. They weren't even a household name like 2 years ago. I didn't even know about them. Yeah, and I'm like, who the hell is Tencent? And I'm like, Jesus, they own everything. They're the Disney of video games.
So that's why, like, part of me is like it's concerning, but at the same time, it's like, well, this will make it easier for people to just go over here, make their own little small thing. Because I'm not owned by Tencent, so if I'll go make a game or a console or whatever, it'll be just like, oh yeah, it's that Fro console, and you just play it over here, and only niche people will know about it, which is kind of what I want anyway.
Yeah.
So it's like, I don't know, like, man, I think there's probably some good in there. Only time will tell, but it depends on what the indie scene does. Like, I feel like the indie scene needs to, really do a little bit more than just make games. I'll go so far as to, make our own consoles, because that's what I want to do. I want to learn Linux and try to figure out if it's possible to build my own console gaming OS to create as its own standalone thing without any, strings attached to like a big corporate overlord like Tencent or EA or whatever, and just go off of your own merit.
Yeah, and honestly, that's the kind of environment that a lot of developers and companies need now, because you have so many that are tied to these large companies, and the larger companies have more of a push as far as curation on all these platforms because they had the money to throw at it. Yeah. I mean, you can say Steam's going, well, we're putting the story because we've seen you play these other games. Well, you've seen me play these other games because it's what you put in front of me. So that leads me to this other game that you put in front of me. And I know not only are you making 30, 40% off of each sale of this game, but you're also getting a kickback from that large company that put this game on your platform to give it a hard push, which is why it came up on your very first splash screen, right? that costs them extra. That's ad revenue that you got on top of that, and probably an extra kickback for the sale, right? Because they can afford to do that.
Yep.
But something that, and Steam is a little better about this than some, because you can follow certain developers. You can set up your own kind of like wish list and do your own curation. So it's a bit more flexible than like say Nintendo Store or the Xbox Store or any of those, right? It gives you that flexibility, which is why I don't put Steam in quite as bad a boat as I do some of the others, right?
Yeah.
Because it does, if you put the time into it, give you the flexibility to find those niche titles in your recommended list, assuming you've taken the time to do it, right?
Yeah.
To set it up right. But how does all this tie into remakes? Because we went into remakes, and I don't feel like we did remakes.
All right. I'll
We did
kick off
remakes in the
remakes.
comments. We're not doing remakes as a topic.
We'll talk about remakes. So, I mean, here's the deal. I'm not against remakes if they're done right. Like the Resident Evil 2 remake, masterpiece. Love the game. Here's a good example. This is a cheap one. It's Medieval for the PS4. It's also
I
got
meant to
all
pick
the
that
updated
one up. It
graphics.
looks cool.
Yeah, it's got all the updated graphics, new things added here and there, and it's also got a full copy of the PS1 version on there as well. And it was $30 at launch. That's how you do a remake, in my opinion. My biggest problem with remakes is when they come out. Zelda Skyward Sword's a great example. Why is that game $60 on the Switch? Absolutely unacceptable. That should be $40. I don't care what anyone
It's a
says.
Nintendo tax, dude. You know that. I love
Oh,
Nintendo.
I
Don't get me
get it,
wrong, but
but-
it's a Nintendo tax.
Yeah.
It's that Switch tax in the end.
But I guess like I'm a little mixed on remakes because part of me is like because of the environment, the gaming environment now, I feel like every remake is going to go through some type of scrutiny or change that's going to damper its original appeal. Like let's say Resident Evil 3 remake. And then because I didn't play Resident Evil 3, but I played it a little bit, but not to completion. But after playing the remake of Resident Evil 3, it seemed kind of like it seemed like it was, what's the word? No effort went into the third one like they did the second one.
Yeah.
Then there were certain like
Yeah.
cosmetic changes that they made to
That was a pretty common complaint because, too, they kind of revamped a lot of the mechanisms and mechanics to make it one more accessible, but they were quality of life improvements at the same time. So it didn't ruin the core game experience, from what I was told. I've not been a big Resident Evil fan, so I haven't jumped into these, so I can't speak from personal experience, right?
Yeah.
But 3 was pretty lambasted for doing exactly what you're saying.
Yeah, a lot of things with 3 is they took out mechanics. Like in 2, you could shoot off limbs of the zombies. They completely stripped that out of 3. Or the bell tower or things of that sort from the original game. So I think that's a lot of the complaints with RE3 remake.
Yeah. And not only that, it's just like, certain cosmetic changes. I know some people are kind of like, it's no big deal. You can't look up Jill's skirt. I'm like, but like the thing is,
I want to
like,
look up her skirt.
not only do I want to, but you said this is a remake. Because remember, you guys are suffering now. That's why you're digging back in the past when you did it well. But you can't take that and bring it back here and then change it and say it's better. Because like you went back in the first place. That's the problem I have with the Final Fantasy VII remake. Because it's not even a remake. It's a reimagining of the game that I wanted. I wanted Final Fantasy VII remake. But instead I got Final Fantasy VII reimagining with ghosts and shit. I'm like, okay.
And Rhea brings up a good point, too, that you guys should probably look at, too. Hiding things behind paywalls on
that
remakes.
is so
I can't stand that.
Yeah, because it's not the same game.
Well, not only that, the real kick in the crotch for this, though, is they put it in an amiibo, and then the scalpers sniped all of the amiibo. So even if you were legitimately going to pay the $30 extra, which is, half the value of
ridiculous? Yes.
Just,
we're just going to call it like it is. Ridiculous, even though it's a cool looking amiibo.
but you're paying for half the value of the game for a convenience feature. But you can't even buy it, honestly, because all the scalpers got it. And now you're at this point where you're like, do I pay like $100? No, screw that. I'm going to make a bin file and just put it on an NFC card.
What do you mean? You don't want my $100 and some amiibo? How dare you?
Yes, we need a Geeks of Rage amiibo. It just calls you names when you put it onto your console.
Exactly. That's what they need.
You're so stupid. You bought this amiibo.
When
What
you
were you
swipe
thinking?
Exactly.
Well, when you swipe it, it just does, instead of like the click, like when you slide a Switch controller and like it goes click, the amiibo goes, no! Oh, no!
If that's the case, can I have one that says yes, sir, every time I dock it? Perfect time to throw it in there.
I can't believe we went there. God, is Chris Turner here? He's probably going to feel bad. I feel bad. Okay.
God.
Oh.
Wow.
Wow. I can't believe we went there.
You are a 5-year-old, and I can like play it on the loop in my head
right now.
I actually kind of like Ryan's here. I like the idea of remakes, bringing great old games forward, but just the trend was that remakes would include the original as part of the package.
Yeah,
and some, I think, have done this, but not enough of them do that.
Yeah, I think it's like a cash grab now. You know, the original appeal of remakes on the surface was that you're getting a updated graphical representation of this game nowadays versus back then.
Well, a lot of them used to let you switch between modes.
Yep.
Curse of Monkey Island was really good about that. You could play it with the new graphical mode, which I personally loved, or you could turn that off and have a high-res version of the old, like 16-bit graphics on that game.
Yeah.
But Alex Kidd did that as well.
Yeah.
I didn't know that, but that's great.
Spyro kind of did it with the soundtrack. You could play the original soundtrack or the updated one.
Yeah.
The original was way better. But I guess
Wonder Boy. Oh, sorry. I was just going to say that Wonder Boy and Dragon's Trap does that as well. You just click a button and it switches between the new art style and the 8-bit.
Oh, no, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But, I guess like with Spyro, I guess the problem I have with remakes is that with Spyro, because I had like a whole arc on my channel about it. Because like I love Spyro. It was like one of my favorite 3D platforms.
I need to go back and play like Spiral and Crash. Like, I never dug into a lot of the PlayStation franchises. I was not a PlayStation guy until like the PS3.
Oh my God.
Which is really warmed up to it. Dude, I hated that controller.
Everybody told me that. Like,
controller.
Everybody used to always tell me that. Like, oh, I hate that controller. It's so small. And I'm like, but I was so used to it because that's all I had. So then, like, I got the 360 when it came out, like maybe about a year or two after it came out, and I got used to playing on that. And then I went back and played on my PS2. I kind of understood it, and I was like, okay, I get it. But at the same time, it wasn't as bad for me because, again, I had it as a kid, so I was completely used to it.
Yeah,
I know that was just me. I was a huge Nintendo fanboy at the time. Two, I was big into fighting games. And that D-pad, every time I tried to play a fighting game on that D-pad, it was a terrible, god-awful, nauseating experience where I couldn't execute anything. And I just said, screw this. Like, I want to play fighting games. And you have all these great fighting games that I can't play because your controller's a piece of crap.
Yeah.
Like, I can't adjust to this, dude. I've tried. I couldn't do a Dragon Punch to save my ass on that thing. And it took me forever to learn how to do it on the SNES and the Nintendo controllers, dude. It took me a long time to learn it, and the diagonal was not very responsive on those. It was great for up, down, left, and right, but diagonals were kind of hard on that controller, and they still are to this day to an extent. I just use arcade sticks now because I have money and I can afford those. Back then, I couldn't.
Yeah, back then.
Yeah,
I that Halo remake Ryan and Geeks of Rage brought up, I absolutely agree. Being able to push select on it whenever you want to transfer from the old graphics to the new.
Oh, it's good.
I don't recommend anybody who's just now getting into Halo ever do the old graphics. I was watching a guy try to get into Halo.
Oh, it's crazy.
And Halo 1 is such a in this day and age, is such a bland, drab, same-ish corridor shooter.
I got it.
It's so hard to navigate.
They sunk me on that, but when I first seen that, my buddy, because I didn't know you could do it, and my buddy's like, oh, you can hit this, and then it'll switch the graphics to the old school graphics. I was like, oh, cool. As soon as I did it, I was like, oh my God, what the hell happened? We thought this was amazing. We're like, oh, can't get much better than this.
But it was also a bait and switch too. If you recall, when Halo was first promoted, they did this amazing video. It was on like all the game magazine demo discs, and they showed like there were fauna, like it showed the warthog driving up this gorge or something, and you see all these like birds and animals fleeing from it and all this stuff. And it was like, this looks amazing. And then you fire up your Xbox and you play it. You're like, what the fuck is what? It's like
because they couldn't load all those assets. Now, the one thing I will always give Halo credit for, is it was probably the most immersive shooter I had ever played at the time. And the reason is because they used the hard drive, so that we cached the next part of the stage as you were transitioning. So you never had load screens in that game, which at the time was phenomenal. And I rarely have ever seen that since, because the assets are so big now, they can't cache things through like that to keep that singular. You felt like you were playing like one level through Halo the whole time, even though everything changed dramatically through it. And that was revolutionary. And what got me back into FPSs was that kind of thought process put into the game, really utilizing the hardware in a way that made sense for that kind of game, right?
Hell was good. It was great.
Yeah, the Master
I had to put that up.
Damn straight.
Damn, skip it.
Thank you. It turns 16 in December.
Your hair is older than both my kids combined.
Oh, man.
I'll say real quick, as far as my whole take on remakes, I can just summarize it with, it's like I'm torn, kind of like what Immortal was saying. Was like, I like it, but at the same time, I kind of feel like it's a lazy cash grab, and it I can't help it that I get a little sour about it. But at the same time, I'm one of those guys that I grab on nostalgia. So I see it, I'm like, God, I love that game, and it's like I feel like I'm an asshole if I don't get it. You know what I mean?
I'll say this, man. Like that was a roller coaster when Spiral came out, because like the reason why I didn't buy it initially, because like when it first came out, I had tears rolling and everything. I was like, oh, Stephen Copeland. Oh. I was like, oh, I'm buying this day one, man. And then I was like, oh, right, but only the first game is on disc. I was like,
yeah, I do remember that for sure. God. The thing about remakes too, guys, when it comes to remakes though, think of it, this is how I think of it. That medieval game I showed off earlier, it's one of the more expensive PS1 games. It's like $60, I think, maybe more. The remakes, if they would bring back more that people don't know about, Legend of Dragoon, Geeks with Rage, and I talk about this all the time. Geeks of Rage, sorry.
Yeah, you're
There's
good.
two of you in there. But games of that sort, if they would bring back more of that, or Dark Alliance 2, the good one, not the new one that we got.
Yeah, the only reason I'm tempted to play the new
Arms.
one's because it's on the Xbox app and I have Game Pass. I'm like, maybe I'll try it just because it's there, because I don't have to pay anything extra for it, right?
Yeah.
I will say this. This is something, I mean, it's kind of, you might as well say it's along the lines of remakes, and like it's going to kind of bounce off of what SGR said. It's kind of something that I kind of had as an idea of what they could do with older games, and I don't know if you guys would get behind this or not, because I mean, I am a huge proprietor of having physical media. That being said, with all of the old school games that are just so jacked up in price, if they had I would even pay for a subscription model to have access to all of the backwards stuff, because if you don't want to make a system backwards compatible, well then damn it, give me the fucking games and I'll just give you the damn money. I'll pay you 10, 15, or even $20 a fucking month. Just give me my damn games. That's all I want.
Emulation.
Speaking of
you know what I mean?
What?
Like,
emulation? What? No.
Oh, I
would
know.
never do
Yeah.
that. No.
Yeah. We can go down that rabbit hole. You piece of shit. You don't want to play it on the original hardware? Oh, you sucking to burn in hell.
False
That means you're not a true gamer.
See, I need like a flame effect I can just put on myself right now. Just leave it there, because I emulate like
send you one.
crazy. It's like all I do.
Oh, God.
I'm the worst. I'm a terrible person.
But the reason I say it, though, is like, if you think about it, like we've talked about this before, as far as like in chat and stuff, if you were to really take the entire collection of everything in the past it is unattainable for any normal person to buy all that stuff. It's just not going to happen. And I'm sorry for the, I mean, I get there's people out there like, they've had the stuff forever, and I get that. But there's people such as myself, and I believe SGR was one as well. Like throughout the years, sometimes you came up on hard times and you had to sell some shit. Not saying you wanted to, but you kind of were in a pinch, like, I can get some money for it, and I kind of need it. And then now, you're trying to go back and buy it, and you're like, I'm not paying $80+ for one game. Like, you're just not gonna do it.
Yeah.
No.
Then you're not a true gamer.
The dark arts.
There are some ways of playing games that others would consider unnatural.
So don't get me wrong. I'd love to play everything on original hardware. It's just, look, I'm not a millionaire, all right? Like, get off my nuts. Like,
I know.
Well,
my upbringing wasn't so clean as to where I could do everything. I had like 4 brothers, and like some of the shit just didn't make it, dude.
Yeah, after about Brother 2, suddenly the hand-me-down just gets more and more worn out until eventually the youngest is like, what the hell is this crap?
I had to like steal the remaining of my stuff. I'm like, I still
Well,
got,
here's the thing: like cards like N64 and below survive a lot better than like say CDs do.
Yeah.
Right? Because CDs get scratches, they break down easier, things like that. They suffer from disc rot. And so those are much, much harder to deal with than like, NES, Genesis, Master System, and those. So those are the easier ones to kind of keep and collect because they're going to last for a much, much longer time.
Yeah.
I feel like, too, as far as collections, and emulation is a way of saving some of those. And then as we've gotten further along, like what a lot of people are considering retro now is stuff like 360 and PS3 and GameCube and stuff like that. And most of those, like especially like 360 and PS3, that's the era where, well, you bought the game, but you still need to download like at least 20 gigs for the game to be playable.
Yeah.
And those are unplayable now unless you get them emulated where somebody's pulled the whole thing off and put it somewhere, right?
Yeah. Hopefully some stranger on the internet did that.
Yeah.
Like the actual developers.
Well,
I think my Marvel vs. Capcom 2 doesn't work. I recently got my 360 back and luckily pulled up my download history. And all my games that I got worked except for Marvel 2. So I don't know what's going on with that. I think there's something currently going on now where I think it's like currently, because Disney and Marvel or rights or whatever, some shit. That's probably why it's not up. But, hopefully maybe someday. But in the meantime, I'll just, find it on the internet.
That's happened quite a few times, though. I mean, Transformers Fall of Cybertron. That's one that goes up and down all the time. It's a fantastic game. The Ultimate Alliance games, Earthworm Jim HD. I mean, there's a lot of them. That's why I don't like digital games, because I feel like one day they could just yank it out from me and be like, "Oh, you don't get it anymore."
DuckTales, the DuckTales remaster was that way.
Oh yeah.
If you had it installed, you could keep it, but it wasn't on the store anywhere. It got pulled for a while. I think it eventually got put back up. Transformers Devastation. And the DMNT game that came out on the Xbox One generation, both of those are really hard to find now because the license is gone.
Yeah, the
right?
PT demo, when that thing was single-handedly selling like $1,000 PlayStation 4s. When you download the PT demo, but they pulled it off.
Consoles with that on it go for like $700-800 now.
Yeah,
just for having that on it,
which makes no sense.
Have you so one of my favorite racing games, and it's kind of odd that I discovered it much later in life, was the Outrun series. Apparently, the newer ones like Outrun Coast to Coast and the SP and all that stuff, it's not for sale anymore because Sega lost the license for Ferrari. So there will never be another, unless there's some new shady deal that comes out years later. There's no honest way to purchase Outrun or Outrun Coast to Coast. So that's why emulation's the only option.
Same thing with Blur. Like Blur, you can't get it anywhere. I had to find it. And I was like, oh wow, it was just sitting over here in the corner. But you literally can't download that game anywhere. It's impossible to buy. Activision didn't renew the license for the vehicles, and it's just gone. And it's like, wow, if you enjoyed that game, and it happens so much. That's why physical media is so important, because digital, it'll be gone the next day. And if you're just like not paying
Yep.
attention, you get really comfortable thinking, I'll download it whenever. Then it's gone.
Yep.
Well, my big problem with physical media, and sorry, go ahead, Geek. Before
I was just going to say it's kind of something that Joe Retro and I were talking about over in my chat was because he likes digital media. And I said, I have nothing wrong with it, but don't take away physical. I said, now, if you are able to download it and then maybe download it to another drive, so and then like you can make multiple backups, cool, fine, whatever. But still at the same time, I always want something that's tangible. So that way, like I told him, basically what Immortal said was when they pull the plug, now you got nothing. And they don't got to tell you when they're going to do it. They can just do it. And then guess what? All that money you just spent, gone. And you got nothing. Nothing to show for it.
No way to get it back.
It's gone. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying that they will pull the plug, but you can't get so lax and be like, well, they'll never do it, because you never know.
Yeah.
I mean, you just can't be like that.
Yeah.
Now, the big problem with that thinking of like I still need my physical is only maybe a fourth year game is actually on your physical medium. Here's another simple example. Like, say, Mortal Kombat, buddy of mine bought Mortal Kombat 10 because we were into 11. We wanted to try 10. So he bought the ultimate version of 10. You think, great, everything's on the disc.
Oh,
Kinda. When he booted it up, we only had 2 characters accessible, Scorpion and Sub-Zero. It took him over 5 hours to get the server connection to authorize the rest of the characters.
fuck
I think
that.
He
Yeah, I
paid
think
for
that's
all
the
the
same thing happened to
characters.
me
They were
now I think
already
about it.
there,
Oh my god.
but they weren't accessible.
Imagine if you didn't have internet.
No, he
Oh,
had
I got a
internet.
story.
Yeah.
for
He was
that.
still
Well,
having
but-
trouble connecting to the server.
Yeah, but
And it's that way with a lot of other games. When you buy them, you've got 12, 15, 20 gig of what's realistically an 80 gig game. You still have to download the rest of it. So
Yeah.
while you have a physical disc, you don't have the complete game. You still can't play it. You can't go 10 years from now after you've uninstalled it, put it in when the servers are down, and play it. It won't work.
Well, I think that's a byproduct of the industry because
Exactly. Because they don't have to make them like that.
Yeah, they choose to because they're trying to phase out physics.
Exactly.
But in 6th gen, everything had to be on the disc, even map packs for Halo. You have to go buy it and like, well, I got it now. But now, since games are getting so ridiculously large for some reason, and they can't fit on the disc, so you just gotta download it. Even with the physical games nowadays, you still gotta connect online to get it. Like, I think Nintendo is the only one that's just like, you don't have to download this update, but you can play it. The only thing you're gonna be missing is DLC, which is optional. But like, as far as the game itself, here it is. That's why like Crash 4, I'm gonna get that on the Switch. I don't even want it on the PS on the PS.
And that brings up another good point. The Switch has been doing a very good job of, you may not have access to all the content later on down the road, like all the DLC characters and stuff like that for Smash, but you're still going to be able to plug it in and play it.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's what's the most important thing, because like DLC should be just that, downloadable content. Now, they if they want to go back like they did back in the day and make a physical variant of DLC, they can. Probably won't, but it's possible. They can do that. They just choose not to. But as far as like at least the game that I bought, at least I have access to everything in it. Because I think Crash 4, it's about time. It's unplayable on PC if the internet goes down because it's a DRM tied to Activision. So
We should probably actually get to the Steam Deck.
yeah.
Because people have been talking about chat for like 15 minutes, and we've had it up, and we've been completely ignoring the topic.
Yeah, but
Back on topic.
I mean, that one we could go make a whole podcast over that.
We
alone.
probably
I mean,
could.
yeah.
And- And there's a lot I love about this, and there's a lot I hate about this because, and it's mostly people's interpretation of what it is.
Yeah.
To be honest, and we could do another podcast on this. Next one we could just talk about this, but we can touch on it briefly because we have it as a topic.
Yeah.
And you know what? I'll go around the room before I start on this one because I've started on a lot of these, and I have a pretty strong opinions on it. So go ahead. Who wants to start?
I guess I will, because like I guess I'm more in the indifferent category. I don't mind it. I think it looks really cool. I think a mobile PC is pretty tight, even though there's been like others like it. I think it's like the One X player and the Win something else. It's kind of like a portable PC. which is really cool. Like it doesn't really appeal to me because like for me the PC gaming experience is optimal. You know, I want the highest graphical setting I can make or I can achieve the highest frame rate. With the Steam Deck, I can make that decision with the Switch easier because I'm like, well, it's the Switch. I can only get Nintendo games here, and I'm not about to jump through all the hoops to make it run better on the what is it, like the CMU or whatever. I like the Switch. I don't mind the Switch, but the Steam Deck, I feel like it's like, I feel like it's for a specific, group of enthusiasts. Like if you like having access to your Steam games on the go wherever you go, that's great. But I don't really see it being anything outside of that,
Yeah, I guess I'll kind of echo on that because like I'm like indifferent / borderline good because like I like the idea. But for myself personally, because like I think it's a good thing in general, but for myself, I'm indifferent because I look at it as, okay, realistically, how often am I going to be playing this on the go? I'm not. And if I'm going to be at home, I'd rather either play on my laptop or I'm going to play on my PC that's in the basement. But I like I said, I like the idea for everybody else that if they are more mobile or if like, say if it's somebody who travels a lot, like for their job or whatever like that, and they have something portable, cool. But like I said, just for me, I'd look at it like I don't see a use for it. And I also look at it as, okay, I'm going to spend X amount of dollars on this version. Instead of spending that on the Steam Deck, what upgrades could I make to my PC or something like that? You know what I mean? And like, that's kind of where I stand on it. But I do like the concept and I do like, the idea, like people were making the memes about obviously saying, here's your Switch Pro, like, I mean, I thought it was funny, but I don't know. I think it's a good thing overall. Yeah. But is it a product for me personally in my lifestyle? Probably not. And I'm not going to probably get it as much as I want to. I have to talk myself out of it because it's just going to be like a $500 paperweight at the end of the day. So I think just for myself, I'm not going to get it. But I think that there is a market for it.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I pretty much share that sentiment.
I'm more curious of like how many people are going to rip into that and throw a bunch of emulators on there and mess with it. See, I knew Rez was going to say something because that's what I'm looking at it. I'm looking at it like the Vita or the 3DS combined, where I can just do whatever I want and play it wherever I want. Hook it up as a PC upstairs, so I don't have to lug this one upstairs or whatnot.
Yeah,
I'm interested, but at the same time, I'm still trying to hunt down a PS5. I can't find one in the store. So if I got $500 to throw out, I mean, either way. But
might be better off with the Steam Deck than you are with a PS5 right now. Their state of their new games. I mean, you can play your PS4 stuff on it for the most part, but there's not a lot of new content outside of like Ratchet & Clank, Miles Morales, which you can play on the PS4, and then Demon's Souls. Demon's Souls and Ratchet & Clank are like the two PS5 exclusives that are there, dude.
It's the one I was shooting for.
Yeah, they're not heavily worth the investment. I still got to boot up Ratchet & Clank. I may do a bunch of streams on that going through that because I still have yet to boot that, get that started yet.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a huge Souls fan, but $70 for one game at a time, it's not even part of this topic, but the Steam Deck back at it. I mean, I'm more curious what people can actually like break into it and do. I'm sure Rez is going to have a good conversation about that in a minute. Is it something I'm interested in? Absolutely. Do I want to pay for it? I don't know yet. That's where I stand.
I'm curious. It depends on what guys like Rez do to it. If you do something crazy with it, I'll be like, I guess
Yeah, I am going to do unspeakable things to this thing. I am going to violate that Stream Deck as much as I can. Well, for starters, it has a paltry storage system. The under a terabyte of SD or SSD hard drive space is unacceptable. I'm going to hopefully get in as much space or capacity in there as possible because, I've been working on that multicade now for years, adding what I can to it and curating it to a point where only games that are at an acceptable level of emulation are allowed to be presented in it. So I don't have like a whole bunch of junk in there that just doesn't play. And the Steam Deck, in my opinion, offers that opportunity to give me that Switch-like experience with a PC gaming system, especially.
Uh-oh, we lost Riz again.
Got him
Did you mute him
again.
again?
Oh no!
I think it's back.
Am I back? Or
There you go. You're back.
Yeah.
I thought Steam got to you, man, when you said you were going to violate their product. They're like, abort, abort.
Violate your internet connection.
which one can see?
Oh man!
He knows
yeah.
too much.
Well, so just being able to consolidate a library of games into a single Switch-like experience, for me, I'm super hyped about this. This will be the first consumer electronic that I've been able to purchase in the wake of this horrible scalping bullshit that's been going on. Like, in Geeks of Rage's Discord, he has a bot that's out mockingly reports about, hey, come to Best Buy right now. You can buy a PS5. Oh, look, it was at 10:57. I look over, it's 10:58. All right, boom, I hit it. No, sold out. It's like,
Yep, of course it is. Of course it is.
Well,
Because the scalpers are still setting up bots to buy these things like crazy.
Yeah.
Because somehow these things are still selling for $1,200 online.
and the kicker is the only person that can solve this issue is eBay. eBay is the only one that can do this because
They
I
can
work
shut
for
it down,
cyber-
and they just choose not to.
Well, no, I work for a
Well, they're making money
cybersecurity-
off of it. Why would they?
Yeah.
No,
They don't
I
care.
I work for a cybersecurity company that has approached these people and said, "Hey, online retailers, we've noticed that you're being plagued by script bots. We have software that can actually counter that, so that it can defeat scripts, so that you don't have somebody that queues up like 1,000 of these things and just automates purchases." And retailers are like, "We get paid either way. We don't care." So
All this
the
money
only
we're making.
the only one that's going to stop this is eBay, and eBay did a great job with the Steam Deck stuff. They're like, nope. They just like, it was funny because I looked at the page, I hit refresh, and all of a sudden it's just like, dook, 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 and they all disappeared. I was like, thank you.
Which makes me wonder why they're not doing that with the PS5s now
Yeah.
and the Series X, because that's exactly what's happening with those still. That's the only reason that scalpers are still snapping these things up as much as they are, is because eBay is their primary outlet for offloading these things once they get them. I mean, you could try like Craigslist and other listing things, but it's not going to have the same penetration to the market that eBay has.
Yeah.
I think it's because, eBay gets a cut every time you sell something. For example, I sold something recently on eBay. They get an X amount of percentage. So they're like, who cares? We're making money. That's what it boils down to.
Why did they do it with the Steam Deck, though, is the thing, right?
Well,
why cancel the Steam
that's a
Deck?
good point.
Well,
Maybe Steam got a hold of them. Like, hey, no, we ain't having this. I don't know.
Then that might be the case. And if so, then Sony and Microsoft need to basically step up and do the same thing.
Yep.
I agree.
It's just so disheartening though to be like, and that's why when the stream, like, it was just a mess trying to get into Steam, and like I hit purchase and I'm sitting there watching the rotating thing, and then it just went at just infinitum. I'm like, oh my god, what happened? What happened? Like, I have lethal blood pressure. Come on, don't fuck with me. And I ended up contacting support, and they're like, Valve support's like, okay, your sale went through. You should get an email. You should be all right. And sure enough, I did, and I was like, wow, this is the first time I was able to purchase something for sale price, online. Everything, like all of the amiibos, I can't buy anymore. The Switch OLED, I didn't even want that. I just wanted to see what it, if it was for sale. Nope, not for sale. PS5, nope. For
Series
Christmas,
X, nope.
Yeah,
Series S, sometimes, but most of the time, no.
Yeah, it's extremely disheartening to be an honest consumer and just be like, I'm not paying the gray market for this. I don't need it. Like,
same thing with the GPUs.
Don't started on that crap. Oh my god.
Yeah. Now, my opinion on the Steam Deck is I see a use for it. Initially, I was like, who the hell is this for? Because this doesn't make sense. Like, it's not really as powerful as a gaming laptop. It's not a full-on PC. People that have a full PC don't want this experience. That's not why you have a PC. And for people that are in a console market trying to come into a PC market, what the fuck are you talking? Like, you could sideload Windows, you can go out and you can do this. The first time somebody does that, it's going to fucking explode in their face and they're going to get pissed, and you're going to get so much negative press on YouTube and everywhere else that, oh, brick to my Steam Deck and Steam won't help me, blah, blah, blah. You
I
know,
don't know what I'm doing.
yeah, I don't know what the hell I'm doing, right? As I've learned more about it, I've kind of warmed up to it a little bit. And on my own, I found a use for it. But for me, it's a side load niche product. And let me expand on that before I go into like all the other stuff that they've done to make this more simplistic and console-like. What I mean by that is I can load certain games, like I have Streets of Rage 4, I have most of my fighting games on Steam. I can take those and I can load those on there and still play them at a high resolution, and I can play them with a friend of mine as opposed to having him cramped in my tiny little computer room to play them. I can hook it up to a full-on TV through like a docking station, right? We can hook up controllers to it and we can play them that way, and I can share that experience with him, and then he can pick them up if he so chooses. But it allows me to do things like that and shooters and things like that. It also gives me access to them a little bit on the go, because there's certain games like Street of Rage, playing it in a mobile setting's fine. Playing things like Skyforce and Geometry Wars and all that are fun to play on the go. Like those work as mobile experiences. So there's a market for games that are on there. Now, do I want to play stuff like Doom Eternal on this thing? Fuck no. I want to take my mouse and keyboard out of my cold, dead hands, and you're coming with me, by the way, before I give that up on stuff like Doom. No, absolutely not. I have no desire to play that in a dual analog format. That's why I bought it on PC. Yep. So I don't have to do it that way, right? And I know you can still hook a keyboard up to it, but I don't want to fuck up. Why in the hell would I hook up a keyboard and a mouse in my living room when I have a perfectly functional computer right here?
Yeah.
Oh.
Like, yeah, I wanna get rid of. To hell with 1440p. Give me that 1280.
Yeah, and I've got a freaking 35-inch ultra wide monitor over here that I can play Doom Eternal on. I want to give that up to play it on my 1080p resolution TV? No, thank you. Yeah. No. You know, I mean, why get myself here when I don't have to? And my PC is more powerful than it and has more storage. Right? So there's certain game types that I feel like are really conducive to that. And as long as you stick with that, you're fine. The problem I have is everybody's like, oh no, I'm going to load Windows and then I'm going to load this and I'm going to just like snap a keyboard onto this thing. And I'm like, no, just buy a freaking laptop if that's what you're going to do with it.
Yeah. I feel like
within the constraints of the hardware, man.
I think that's the whole issue where when the mainstream appeal of something, because people, they have no idea what it is. But they just like, oh, it's like a mini computer. Oh, that means I can do this. And Steam is like, we're using Proton and not everything's going to work. I don't know what that means. I just know I can do this stuff.
Right. And, you know, I've had people telling me that I've had people tell me they're going to strap SSDs to the back of the thing. I'm like, you might want to wait on that because just because you could Velcro an SSD to the back of this thing, you don't know how hot the center of this thing is going to be. Like this thing is so wide so that your hands aren't near the part that's going to basically be nuclear. And God help, if you've ever had a gaming laptop before and you've tried just putting that thing on your lap, if you want to lose 3 layers of skin, go ahead.
I learned the hard way and bought a cooling pad immediately. I was like, oh my God, what is this?
How would you like your eggs, sunny side up?
Exactly my point. So I'm like, look, don't go talking about add-ons you're going to put on this thing until you've seen it and you know how warm the thing gets, right? So slapping a piece of Velcro on there, the adhesive's going to melt. The plastic might melt to your case. No telling what it's going to do to the damn SSD you've got in the case by the time it gets that hot. You just don't know, right? You're going to have to play a wait-and-see game with this thing and see what works and see what doesn't. It's fine to theorize and experiment with it, but they built this thing as a custom unit. And one of the things that Valve's pretty good at when they actually put their mind to it, we're not talking like the Steam controller or the Steam box, and if you really want to go into the Steam Deck, it's the Steam box, guys, in a new skin.
Yeah.
It's a Steam box. Nobody bought it then, and now you guys are losing your mind about it.
Hey, Malibu Stacy has a new hat.
That's a new shiny new hat.
Oh,
Yeah.
hype, get on the hype train. I'm like, bro,
Yeah, and you could throw stuff like Big Box on it and stuff like that. And you can run your emulators, or you could just throw RetroArch on it, and you can throw your emulators on it. And I think it'll be great to be able to sideload stuff like that. You can do that via Linux. You don't need to load Windows for that, right? If you want every article I've seen, there was somebody been on YouTube. They're like, so what happens when you load Windows on it? And they're like, well, you can do that, but they're not really going into a lot of details, right? Because they're hoping you'll just shut up and use Proton, because that's how they built it.
Well, Windows hasn't been optimized for mobile interface. Like the thing about Linux is, love it or hate it, because it's not always the most user intuitive. It's very light. You know, it's not going to bloat your system up with a bunch of useless glut that Windows has amassed over the years. That's why we'll never see an open source Windows system, is because the moment those drapes are pulled aside and you see how much of a spaghetti code is hiding behind that.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
no. Microsoft does not want anybody touching their code because they can barely maintain it.
Yeah.
That's just fact.
Yeah. My biggest point of contention, though, with the Steam Deck is that storage space. The SSDs are just unacceptably small. I mean, it's not even a terabyte. That's insane.
Well, I mean, that's why you have the micro SD card. It'll take over a terabyte micro SD card just natively.
Yeah, but
right?
the input output, though, on an SD card reading versus that SSD.
They've actually done some work on that to make sure that that's not such a big issue. Mm-hmm. I've actually watched a lot of videos on this. They've done a decent amount of work. Like, the way I thought it was going to be really funny the first time somebody had to update their graphics drivers on this thing. Like, I was just like, oh, I can't wait till a console gamer has to update their graphics drivers. Oh, it's going to be so funny because they're just going to rage.
Yep,
but they've made it to where it's like a package. It just downloads to the thing, and it because they know the hardware and they know the GPU and everything that's in it. So they're just going to do that for you to make it more like a console experience. So they've actually done a very smart and kind thing for PC users. Savage is over here like, the rent was great. But, you know, I was just, there were so many things I was hoping they didn't catch, because I really, really, really wanted to see the console user, because I know so many people that are console users that hate PCs, but they really want one of these. And I'm like, oh, I can't wait. I can't wait. I'm just salivating, waiting on you to, like, just the first time you have like a graphics update and you can't
know what to do.
Oh, it's gonna be so glorious.
Your fears are so sweet.
Thing with PC, man, it's trial and error.
It really
if you're not
is.
used to that, then you're gonna suffer. Like, just stick with consoles, dude. Like,
you remember? Do you guys? Maybe I'm dating myself here, but do you remember like VESA drivers and like switching when you had to have BAT files, like auto exec BAT files to run games and stuff in like Windows 95?
Yes, I do.
I have no idea what that is.
Yeah, like the Windows 98 was probably the beginning of when PCs became like the best, in my opinion, like the more consumer-friendly gaming platforms, because there is so much shit that PC gamers had to do prior to the 98 like DirectX stuff that, you know, console gamers would be like, what the fuck, what? Like, and then we have things like Steam, which is basically, in my opinion, a better form of Xbox Live. Like, games before Steam, yeah, it's like, okay, I bought this game on disc. I don't know if I can run it. Let's roll the dice when I bring it home, put it in my thing, and it says, no math coprocessor. What the fuck is that? Like, you know?
Well, time to go on an adventure.
Yep.
Well,
Exactly.
and honestly, for the longest time, PC games were kind of a nightmare to use, and it wasn't until about 5 or 10 years ago that they finally started streamlining that experience, because you couldn't really use controllers. And so you'd have a game that got translated. Like, I remember trying to play Mortal Kombat 2 on PC, and it looked brilliant, but you had to use like WSAD and the number pad. And it was hell. I happily took the graphical downgrade.
Yeah.
Like, there was no way. You had to find external programs, and then you had to map the keys, and half the time that didn't work with the program, and it was a nightmare. You had to do everything manually because there was no way to do that. And Steam really took the ball and ran with that, as far as making it to where when you go onto Steam, What you're not paying attention to is it will literally take your controller and recognize if it's a PlayStation controller or an Xbox controller, and it will map the controls for you.
Yep.
So that you don't have to do it anymore. And I'm like, thank you so much. I will worship at the altar of Valve because I don't have to do this anymore. Because it sucks so bad.
Yep.
And some games don't work with it too well, but that's because they don't set up the mappings, right? They don't set up a mapping profile. They're just lazy. Because you paid $1 for the game, you could just suck it up.
Yeah.
That's really what it boils down. It's like, what? It cost you $1. Fuck you.
You want me to do what for $1?
What do you want for $1?
I'd buy that for $1.
So, you take the good with the bad there, but for the most part, and the funniest thing is when I tried playing Killer Instinct on PC because it was crossplay between Xbox One and PC, if you got it through the Xbox app, and this was fucking hysterical. I bought it up and I hooked up my PlayStation 4 arcade stick. I'm like, we're going to throw down. And it didn't work.
Oh,
Like, nothing worked. I hooked in a 360 controller and it didn't work. And I'm like, what the hell? I found it on sale on Steam for like $10 for the whole thing. And I'm like, fine, I'm going to double dip so I have it on my PC. Worked out the box. I'm like, wait, so your crossplay game that was Xbox One /PC doesn't work through your Xbox store worth the crap, and everybody's complaining about the controller support because none of them work. The Xbox fight stick didn't work. The PlayStation fight stick didn't work. Half the controllers didn't work. But Steam gets a hold of it. Now it works.
Yeah.
We care.
Just like, what?
Oh, hail Lord Gaben.
Praise unto thee.
Yeah.
I remember my first Steam sale. I was like, is this real?
Yeah. And then Humble Bundle's like a whole new thing too.
Yeah.
If you find the right one on that and you get up to that, you can get like a ton of games on that for like next to nothing. There's a lot to like about Steam, and bringing that to a format that console players are going to like is kind of great. But I just see Steam just cackling all the way to the bank because now they have their store in even more places, which was really the goal, right?
Yeah.
They've been trying to get in your living room forever because they know once people start getting like hooked on Steam, man, as soon as you get that first fix, you're like hooked. You know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
First one's free.
All right, guys. Sorry, I keep looking this way. I gotta leave the party a little early.
Oh,
We actually ran way longer than I thought we were going to run.
Yeah.
If anybody's got any like wrap up or last thoughts, let's go ahead and do that. By the way, one last call out. Everybody else's channel except for mine, since you're already on my channel, is in the description. So you guys should definitely check all these guys out. They all run great channels. So
Awesome.
Does anybody have any closing thoughts so we can wrap this up for everybody?
No, fine.
Thanks for having me on. Nice
thank
to
you.
actually talk to you guys in person for once.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of.
This is nice.
To see your face at least. Besides Geeks of Rage, you just
Yeah,
well,
he's over
I
there
have-
doing his own
I'll
stream.
say
It's all good.
I had to stream it on my end. Freaking YouTube and their stupid algorithm, I can't go one day without having a stream, or else I'm just going to get the shaft.
Down the ladder you go.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, I definitely want to thank Nick for this. This was a big surprise, and it was kind of at the spur of the moment. And you whipped all this together for us, and I think the stream was really amazing.
This was easy. I'll be honest, this was
Oh,
really
it is.
easy.
Yeah, it was very easy.
Very, very appreciative. This was really this was a lot of fun. I'm glad you guys invited me, and I hope we can do some more of these because this is great.
Dude,
Oh,
I'm
yeah, for
totally
sure.
fine for making this a regular thing. If you guys want to make it a regular thing, we
Awesome.
can either swap out who hosts it or I can host it. It doesn't matter to me. I don't care. As long as you guys are into it. I knew this would be a first thing, and we'd see if it went and see if people wanted to do it again and see what the audience was and what the timing was for everybody. So, it doesn't matter to me. Sunday's usually pretty open. If it's not, I'll let you guys know. Right. But for the most part, Sundays are not a bad day for me.
All right.
Awesome.
Sounds good to me.
Alrighty.
All right.
All right, guys. Everybody in the chat, everybody who popped in, there's like way too many names that came in. Lots of new people came in for a little while, like Cross and the other name that I cannot pronounce. And
Anko Kushiki.
Oniko Kushiki from your crowd. A lot of people from my crowd popped in, and everybody was super supportive. It was awesome having all the new faces and a lot of my regulars coming here. Hopefully we'll have like more of a mix of everybody's channels kind of popping in and checking it out as people get more used to it being here. This one popped up so last minute that I honestly didn't. The fact that we kept like 8 to 10 people most of the time was pretty good, because realistically this was so like short planned. I didn't expect much, to be honest. So. But thank you, everybody who showed up on the panel. Definitely check out their channels if you've not. Thank you, everybody in the chat. You guys were awesome about participating and being part of the panel. And hopefully we'll be doing this again, and everybody will pop in and have a good time. So until next time, happy gaming, everybody.
All right.
Later, guys.
Yeah.